Welcome to everyone. We have a number of presentations tonight, so this will be a fairly in-depth informational meeting, so I'm very excited about that. I did want to report that Justin Hem has resigned his position on the school committee effective immediately, so that, I believe, puts me in acting chair, which anyone who knows me knows I'm not thrilled about because running meetings makes me nervous, so sorry, we're all stuck together for now. I just want to say that this will probably be the first meeting in a long time that we return to our sort of normal business rules, and if you need a copy of those, they're at the back of the room. We've had a lot of question and answer periods throughout the past months, and public comment has become much more of a question and answer period, which it is not intended to. So beginning tonight, we'll be returning to our normal method, which is the folks presenting tonight are presenting to the school committee. We are conducting our meeting in public. This is a business meeting of the school committee conducted in public. And folks who have comments, we appreciate you holding them to the end, and they would be in the comment format. So thank you, and let's get started. We've got, so I would entertain a motion to approve minutes from the meeting, the last meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the meetings of the March 28th meeting.
I second.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yes.
That's 4-0. Thank you, Colleen. And Colleen Andrade is filling in for Colleen Moore, who is homesick.
I think we were going to ask people if anybody has
Oh,
comments.
thank you.
That's okay.
No, I know,
No
and you've
worries.
reminded me too.
Yeah,
You're
it's
so
okay.
good. So it turns out that, and it is great, that someone is live streaming our meetings. That's totally fine. But we're supposed to ask and then let everyone know you're being live streamed. So I'm sorry. So I will start every meeting like that. Maybe we could put a little note, because I'm going to forget every meeting. So if anyone is live streaming, you just have to raise your hand. You don't have to identify yourself.
Good.
No hands up? Great. All right. So no one is being currently live streamed, other than the fact that
Right.
WAVM is taping us. So.
This is being recorded to be posted, and we
It's
are
usually-
actually supposed to let everyone know that. at the
Yes, so
beginning.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
things we're supposed to do more legally, and, it's Maynard, so we get, usually a little bit looser, but
Right.
it's being recorded, and the kids are amazing, and they usually post it within 24 hours.
We, just to follow up on that, so the school committee members had a workshop last Wednesday, and we learned a lot about what we are supposed to be doing, so that's where some of this stuff is coming from, so we will be better from now on.
The workshop was with the Massachusetts
Right.
Association of School Committees?
Exactly, yep, so.
Great, thank you. I will move on to chairperson's report. I don't think I have anything. I know that I'm eager to turn it over to Dr. Girardi, because I know as part of his superintendent report, we're expecting a report from the first report from the Green Meadow Future Committee. So I don't think I have anything. If I remember, I can do it during members' comments. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Girardi.
So I just want to report a couple of exciting things. At our next school committee meeting, we'll be bringing information about the work that the Educational Alliance has been doing around early college. There's some exciting news going on there, and exciting opportunities for our high school, and our students and staff. Also, tonight, I just posted the Maynard Music Association updates on the website, so if you get a chance, please look at those, and they go out on Facebook as well. This week, we also saw some very positive results from the school committee policy subcommittee's work on the animal therapy policy. On Monday, we had a wonderful therapy dog named Greta come to Maynard High School, and the students during their lunch period could come and meet Greta. Staff came, we all came, we took some pictures, and that'll be posted tomorrow too. I'll get that up on the website. I've got a picture of Greta, her handler, and some of the very important staff and students who really made this happen. But kudos to our policy subcommittee, Mauro and Beth Lynn, because they really pushed to make sure this happened. And it's been a long time coming, so thanks to the two of you. I'm also pleased to report that the air purifiers for Green Meadow were finally received, and that our head custodian was able to install 14 units over last weekend. He's going to be doing even more work over vacation, so we're hoping to get those installed, but there's a lot of them. And he has to also coordinate that with the electrician, because some of the rooms, there might have to be some electrical work to get those up. But the good news is that last weekend he installed a bunch, and he's going to be working even more over vacation. So I'm excited to report that. Also, tonight, we submitted the SOI, the Statement of Interest for the Green Meadow, to the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority. We actually submitted it a day earlier than we planned, but we're still getting the final signatures. Myself, The chair and the town administrator have to all sign it, but that should be done by tomorrow as planned, so I'm excited about that. I need to thank so many people for this. To start, Jennifer Gaudet and Michelle Resendiz were the primary authors. They worked so many hours to make sure that this got done. I can't thank them enough for all of their work. They also worked in collaboration with our facilities department, Aaron McCloskey and Tim Goulding from the facilities department, and Josh Morse from the Green Meadow Future Committee provided support and advice on this grant application. And when you have that many people working together, I feel really positive about that. So I think we're going to have a positive outcome, and I'm crossing my fingers, but we're all doing our part, and we just need those final signatures by tomorrow, and it will be officially submitted.
Awesome. That's great. Great work on that.
So with that said, I did want to yield my report because the Green Meadow Future Committee emailed me and said that they had a meeting and they'd like to talk about that. So I would like to include them as part of the superintendent's report and have them come up and speak to the work that they've done. So I do believe we have some members of Green Meadow Future Committee that wanted to come up and speak to that.
It's a microphone there, and if we can make you more comfortable by sitting up here, it's
Yeah, you're
really,
welcome to do that,
it's pretty loose.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure you're comfortable. Part of the trick is finding the way up.
Do you want to pass your mic to them, or?
Sorry, AJ. I promised him we didn't need one over there.
Yeah, we can sit back. Why don't you guys, you guys go in the front right now.
You're gonna want the microphone.
Yeah. Just take these.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's fine.
Did you want to sit up there, John?
Here, I'll be here. So then, these ones you do have to bring a little closer.
I think you can go. You want to go first? Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. For folks who don't know me, my name is Josh Morse. I am a father of twin girls in Mrs. Basta's class. I am a member of the Green Meadow Future Committee, and we just recently got together for our first meeting. But I wanted to go through a couple things briefly here, just to give everybody an update of where we're at and what we've accomplished so far. So on March 28th, the Green Meadow Futures Committee was appointed by the school committee. Thank you very much. On March 30th, recognizing the narrow window of opportunity to review the existing conditions of the pre-K wing, the committee met at Green Meadow to tour the wing. The following day, on March 31st, the draft Green Meadow report, which outlines the existing conditions of the building envelope, perimeter, and interior conditions of the pre-K wing, was generated. About a week later, on April 8th, committee members attended the Finance Committee meeting and formally requested the fund authorization for Green Meadow remediation include language that would allow for the use of funds to cover professional services needed for the root cause evaluation and corrective actions needed as part of the remediation efforts at the Green Meadow School. On April 9th, the committee members met for the first time and established our structure, reviewed existing conditions, and made votes to make immediate short-term recommendations. A report has been provided. It is a draft report. We recognize that we need to do the entire building, but quite frankly, it's only been a couple weeks. So we focused our efforts on the pre-K and K wing. We are going to get back out and do the remainder of the school and make recommendations there as well. So very briefly, just going through some of the immediate short-term recommendations. As I mentioned, I think one of the things that we feel strongly about is that we are going to need to, thank you, we are going to need some professional services, really some design services to help us navigate through the work that needs to be done at the Green Meadow Elementary School. And really what we're looking at is understanding the town structure and how financing works. We're under a bit of a deadline, which with the April 22nd Finance Committee meeting approaching and the warrant deadline to get this to town vote, we're suggesting that we earmark approximately $50,000 for design funds to allow us to work over the summer. We may or may not need to utilize that full amount, but we think it would be prudent to have that money earmarked as necessary. What I want to be clear about here is I am always hesitant of reports that just collect dust. I'm not looking for somebody to come in and tell us what we know. I'm looking for somebody to come in and help us actually come up with a a plan to go forward and a set of plans and specifications that we can publicly bid for whatever work that ultimately gets recommended through this process. We expect that one of those things is going to be design work for work on the roof, up to and including full replacement. One of the things that we need to evaluate as a group, which is going to require additional resources within the town, is the long-term plan for Green Meadow. We can't really make a sound decision on the short-term plans without understanding the long-term plans. To be clear, that does not mean that we don't have things that we have to do quickly with the roof. It just means that we need to be smart about where we make that investment and how we make that investment. And with that, we have some recommendations about potential funding sources. Part of the reason why we made the recommendation to the Finance Committee is that the $610,000 that's being authorized, if by some miracle that comes in under budget, we wanted to make sure that the authorization language allowed flexibility such that if there is funds available, it would allow us to get started on those design services and engage with a professional architect. In the event that that money is not available, we recommended some other funding sources. The $150,000 of the $850,000 that was authorized many years ago, if there's funding left over for that, based on the language, at least from when I made the recommendation back in 2009, I believe it's in keeping with the language from back then. The other thing or the other account is possibly the $100,000 that is earmarked for the 15 roofs throughout Maynard. And then lastly, other consulting line items that might be available. We might be able to pool some resources. I would say that $50,000 is more than enough. If we can get anything to get started, it would be very helpful for everybody involved. And then briefly, just to go through the rest of the recommendations based on the report. So the roof, we recommend that we remove all debris and organics from the roof. The roof is obviously in very poor condition, but what I saw when I was up there was a lot of ponding, which is always a bad thing, but it's especially bad when you're dealing with a roof that's compromised or in poor condition. So that's something that we recommend right away. Included in that, we recommend repairing the gutters and downspouts to the extent that we can. There's some obvious pieces out there where gutters have been pulled away from the building, suspected probably due to ice damming over the past winters. Downspouts, just some simple downspout extensions. They're very, very inexpensive. Anything to get the water away from the foundation of the building will help a great deal. Remove all the organics from within 5 feet of any fresh air intake. This kind of goes back to what I was just mentioning about the downspouts. One of the problems that you see with buildings is that, and this is not unique to Maynard, I'll say this very clearly. You see this in a lot of school districts where if water pools against the foundation, it naturally becomes an area that organics want to populate. You get more organics, you get more moist air, you get more natural irritants, you get all kinds of things. So it sounds crass for a landscape architect, but as a building commissioner, I don't like anything organic if I had it my way, within 10 feet of any building. It may look pretty, but it's a nightmare when it comes to maintenance. There was one particular classroom where Lexan was covering the fresh air intake, blocking air from going into that space. And in fact, actually, to be fair, I don't believe it was a classroom. I believe it was an office. In talking with the facilities department, it sounds like quite a while back, the unit ventilator had failed, and they put that up to try to keep the space from getting too cold. So a lot of times you see triage type situations where you're trying to make the best of a bad situation, but we need to make sure we're following through and addressing the root cause there. We also are recommending that we repair all rooftop exhaust fans and gravity dampers as needed. So there's a couple things that we noticed. There are a lot of roof fans that are just not functioning. There are a lot of roof fans that are functioning, but the belts are broken. So the way it works is it's a motor and a fan assembly, and the motor spins and it turns a belt, which turns a pulley, which turns the fan. If the belt is broken, the fan's not blowing any air. A very simple way of knowing this is you can put your hand under the fan. If there's no air coming out, it's not working.
But it might sound like it's working.
But it might sound
to
like it's
somebody
working.
that doesn't, yeah.
Exactly. So, I've been listening to it for a very long time. I can walk by from the ground and tell you if an exhaust fan belt is broken. But, as part of the routine inspections for the maintenance staff, I would recommend just going through. It's a very simple test. You put your hand under the exhaust. If there's air blowing, you're good. If there isn't, you got a problem.
Just if I'm in a classroom or a hallway or an office, where am I looking up for?
So these are actually, I'll go inside the building in just a second. These are rooftop exhaust fans. So it's not something the staff would not know this from outside the building. The custodial staff should know while they're doing their inspections, or the maintenance staff. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's the other problem. I suspect that the gravity dampers, basically exhaust fan exhausts the bad air or the old air out of the classroom. And I'll just say classrooms because it's easier to describe that. The univentilator provides tempered fresh air. So your heat and your fresh air coming into the space. If either one is not working correctly, you don't get good air exchange. The other thing that exists in those exhaust fans are what are called gravity dampers, meaning that when the exhaust fan comes on, the damper's open and it pulls the air out. When the exhaust fans go off, like at night, the damper's shut, and this keeps the cold air from coming down like a chimney effect. Oftentimes those dampers, because they operate open for extended periods of time, will fail open. They rust up and they just fail open. Then what happens is we get teachers in the audience. How many do we have? All right, so whether you know you did it or whether it was somebody decades before you, what ends up happening is a lot of those exhaust intakes are tucked away in little areas. Like in the pre-K K-wing, those exhaust intakes, well, on the kindergarten side specifically, are actually in the little recesses on the hallway side, and you have to lean down and look up. That's your fresh air intake. So what oftentimes happens when those dampers freeze up and they stay open, it just drops cold air into the space. So a teacher comes in and goes, what the hell is going on? And they either shut it, or they tape it all up, or they block it off. Again, fine to do for a day. You don't want to do it for a long period of time, because you just shut off all of your exhaust air. And now you got 24, I don't know how many kids, but I'm making it up, 24 kids coming in, all with different germs and colds and flus, and now you got it all there with no bad air going out. So that's that piece. We recommend as part of that, we perform an air balancing test. That's basically where you make sure that the exhaust fans and the unit ventilators are working properly. The thing that's interesting about the classrooms there is that the unit ventilators have high, low, medium switches on some of them. I hate to see those. I know it's kind of nice for the staff, but the problem with that is that it throws off the balance. In my experience, they almost always operate on low or medium. They never operate on high because it's way too loud. So I would prefer to just put it on medium and leave it there, and then we can balance the air and everything works properly. But that's not a major deal breaker. The unit ventilators, you probably saw from the pictures, there's a lot of debris and material in the unit ventilators. Those are, again, your fresh air delivery devices. They're your heating delivery devices. You have forced air in each classroom. If the unit that is blowing forced air is full of leaves and trash and race cars and Legos and Play-Doh, you're just blowing that into the space. It doesn't work as well. It's like your vacuum cleaner being chock full of just stuff. It doesn't work that well. So that's something that needs to get cleaned out. One of the most important things that I think we should do, and this is what I would call low-hanging fruit. Right now, Green Meadow is using fiberglass air filters. It's allowed. There's nothing that says you can't do it. I haven't seen it used in a school system in a very long time. They're very inexpensive. They're typically used during construction for startup. They're very good at filtering out large items like leaves. They do almost nothing for particulate, dust, pollen, mildew, mold. I'm not afraid to say that word. There's all kinds of outdoor irritants. And the thing about indoor air quality is that there's a lot of different things that can cause problems, but the bottom line is if somebody is experiencing, whether it's a serious medical issue or just stuffy, dry eyes, just general symptoms, anything you can do to limit exacerbating that situation is only going to make it better. So if you can reduce the pollen, reduce the particulate, reduce the mold that is outside that is coming inside, then even if you have a problem within the building, you've already made it better. And that's a nice, simple thing we can do. The difference between a fiberglass filter and a pleated air filter is less than $1, and they need to be changed quarterly. The other thing that I do, it's all about accountability. I make all of my custodians with a Sharpie write right on and sign on the edge of the filter saying when it was changed. And then I routinely inspect. And if it has been more than a quarter, they get written up. And it's not a knock on custodians. We're all accountable for our jobs. But that's how you do it.
And those are the unit vent filter?
Those are the unit vent filters, yep. Same thing for rooftop. Like, you don't have that really at Green Meadow. You do have some interior air handlers. I didn't get into those yet. Downstairs in the boiler room. You see more of that like at your high schools. I would recommend the same exact policy. You probably are already on pleated air filters over there, but I do recommend dating those. It's really helpful. All right, then we have the recommendations by the start of the next school year. So this is where we transition into how do we keep a lot of this from ever happening again. It's all about preventative maintenance. It's all about being proactive and not reactive. People have said it. It's true. It's not rocket science. So just read through these real quick. And also I want to recognize we want to be supportive. We want to help. We want to know what we can do to facilitate making these things happen. And if you need support from parents in any fashion, here and other committees, financial, whatever we need to do, we want to help make this happen. The other thing that I think is important to point out is that I'm going to say things like the custodians or the facility department. Quite frankly, one of the things we as a committee want to better understand is what are the roles and responsibilities of the different groups, because we don't know. I'll tell you, I'll pick on myself for a second. My custodians, if you go to City Hall in a snowstorm, the steps at City Hall in Newton, in Newton are not shoveled. Because way back in the 1960s, the contract that was negotiated with the custodians said that they never touch snow. So they don't put salt out, they don't shovel the walkways. That's extremely rare. Most custodians do have some level of that. We don't. So I'm going to make recommendations. We need to confirm that the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, allows for that. And if it doesn't, if we say that the custodian should do it and they can't, we just need to identify who can. So the custodian should inspect the roofs weekly to ensure roof drains are clear, exhaust fans are functioning properly, and to report maintenance issues as needed. This should be entered into the PM Direct module of school dudes such that work order requests can be, such that the work order process can be automated, meaning that they automatically get notified as needed to perform those inspections. Gutters and downspouts should be cleared as needed and more frequently in the fall and thoroughly cleaned prior to the winter months to avoid ice damming. This should be entered into the PM Direct module of the school dudes such that the work order request process is automated. Custodians should walk the perimeter of the school daily to ensure downspouts are connected and working and to make sure the building is in good repair. Custodians should open the unit ventilators monthly to vacuum out the interior cavities. Filters should be changed as needed, but not less than quarterly. When filters are changed, the date should be written on the side of the filter with the initials of who changed them. This should be entered into PM Direct module for school dude, such that the work order request process is automated. Teachers should be educated on how the unit ventilators, building controls, and exhaust systems work so that they can help support the efforts to improve indoor air quality. All right, this is something I struggle with. I've struggled with in my district. This is an issue in every community I've ever gone to. And I'm going to pick on the teachers for a minute, and I don't mean to be mean about it. Univents are a very attractive place to put stuff. It's not a place you want to put stuff. I'll give you a little tidbit of information. When the unit ventilator is blowing cold air, it doesn't mean that it's not working properly. It could mean that it's not working properly, but those univents are supposed to blow cold air, believe it or not. The way they work is, if they're working properly, they have a minimum outdoor air setting of 10%. That means that you have to keep fresh air going into that space, and you want fresh air going into that space. But the boilers, the heat source, just like at your house, cycle on and off. So if the boiler cycles off because the building is satisfied, then the heat source in that unit ventilator starts to draw down. It's still blowing the same cold air from outside. So it means that there's going to be times throughout the course of an hour where you get cold air, and then 15 minutes later it should be warming back up again. If you get cold air the entire time, something's not working. If you get cold air for more than probably 10, 15 minutes, something's not working. If you get cold air for a few minutes, a couple times an hour, that's expected. But don't block the top of the univents. That's a big thing. Try to avoid getting anything in the grill because it goes directly into the fan assembly and gums it all up. The other thing, this is one that a lot of people don't know, is that there's return air. Return air is, it takes the air in the classroom, a portion of it, and recirculates it. That's natural. It does that to preheat the cold air coming in. The return air intake is at the very bottom of the unit ventilator. So if you're looking at it, it's the bottom like 2 inches on the unit ventilator. That's really important for the teachers. It's also very important for the custodians because I can't tell you the number of times I've seen custodians go through and they sweep everything over thinking that it's just the edge of the wall and they sweep it right into the intake of the univent. Now your filter that you just changed is plugged solid. So if you changed it last week, it's shot for the next 3 months until you change it again. So we've also reached out to Michelle and Aaron, and actually I'll update this because this just came through a few minutes ago. It sounds like Greg is going to join us at our next Green Meadow Future Committee meeting so that we can better understand the current duties and responsibilities of everyone. Quite frankly, we're not trying to get into the MOU and who's doing what, but for the time being, we need to know where to direct some of these recommendations and who to talk to. That's all. And I'm just about done. We have heard from many teachers that they want the old sinks removed. We've also heard from some teachers that would like sinks to go back in. I would encourage that we open the dialogue with the staff to make sure that for some classes, I think specifically where I heard the most was the preschool classrooms. I think they would like, and I don't want to speak for the teachers, we should engage with them and let them call the shots, but the teachers I spoke to, specifically the pre-K ones, asked that at a minimum we go back with a small hand sink. And I would highly suggest, it may not seem like too much of an issue right now or in the summer, but I think you'll be regretting it come flu season if we don't have hand sinks in those pre-K classrooms. And then three last things. We know that, like I said, we know we need to tour the rest of Green Meadow. We will do that. We're going to try to schedule that in the next few weeks and round out the report. We are also working with Principal Dankner to complete a teacher survey to obtain as much information as possible. And for everybody in the audience, our next Green Meadow Future Committee meeting is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. In the Green Meadow cafeteria. We apologize for the 5 p.m. meeting, but we wanted to get that done as quickly as possible, knowing that school committee was meeting here shortly. Megan.
I just want to, thank Josh, who anticipated the need to quickly get into the closed wing before it was sealed off for abatement, so that we could have a discussion with lots of good details. So that was great, and that's why everything's moving quickly. And then, we focused on that FinCom deadline of 4/22. So we definitely got into, the nitty gritty in terms of what kind of recommendations do we need. Do we have the opportunity to make? We don't want to miss this opportunity that we have. But we still talked about representation and committee, structure that we talked about in the last meeting. So. We're definitely still going to return to that topic. So the committee, we're still going to reach out to the other people that volunteered their time to join. And so we're going to be asking some questions. I have a question about whether our committee has the full authority to add people, or is that going to be a recommendation to the school committee and then you guys would vote on that?
I hadn't thought about it in terms of legal, but I would love this whole process to be ultra legal. What might just be the easiest path forward, because I hate to call the lawyer for everything, is let's say you folks want to, if you folks vote and agree that you would like to put 2 more people on the committee and just come to us for sign off, I can't imagine the committee is going to push back. I don't want to speak for 4 people, but that avoids a call. I think it's ultra legal, and really, you're still calling the shots, which I really like. So I would propose you think about that, but that could just be a nice, really easy way to do it.
Okay.
Just from
Yeah, go
any
ahead.
odd number
Yes.
of folks, so you don't have a hung, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think technically we have, when we have a committee that's of the school committee, we are technically the ones that make the appointments, you've been
Right.
through the town hall process now, it's very official.
Yeah.
But I believe, I just get the feeling that we would be happy to sign off on what you folks agree you need.
Okay. So, and then in terms of the way we engage with staff, we discussed that a bit, and I definitely want to make sure that the staff feels, part of this process and represented effectively, right from the beginning. So, like Josh mentioned, we discussed having, engaging with them on a survey, and that's something that I'd like to. That, in our next meeting, we'd like to have, a draft of the survey where we say, here's some different options in terms of representation on our committee, and then I'd like to see how they respond to that, just so that they're buying into the way that they're engaging in the committee. So, yeah.
That sounds great.
Okay. And then obviously, we're so lucky that Josh has all the technical knowledge. And so for us for those of us who are not building commissioners, I was really happy to see, and we had Dave had some good categories. So basically, I mean, this initial report, it came down to like 4 categories of recommendations in terms of, roof, ventilation, drainage, and maintenance. And so I was encouraged that it seems to me that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, which Josh mentioned in terms of maintenance, in terms of things that, because I think we're in a situation at this point in time where there's a cumulative effect, right? So we have all these things that contribute to air quality. And a lot of these things are like low cost, items that we can address. So I was encouraged to see a lot of like items that then we can act on. And so hopefully by engaging Michelle and Greg and Aaron, we can start to really put a plan together to act quickly on those easier things, so.
The only other thing that just dawned on me, that I know that there are some outstanding questions specifically on the staff end. I think, and this would be one of the things that I think we should recommend to Aaron, and to you, Dr. Girardi, is I think we need to do a better job explaining to the staff what our plan is for phase 4 as far as schedule. There are some that are concerned, that if we have to wait, there's some rumors out there, so I'm not sure what's true, what's not, but I'll just put the concerns out there and let, you don't have to respond to each of these, but just so you're aware. There are concerns that if we have to wait till after July 1st, because that's when funding becomes available, that we won't be ready in time for the start of the school year. That's one. The other is that we will be ready for the start of school year, but it'll be the day before school opens, and there'll be no time for the teachers to actually move in. So that's 2. And then the third thing I think is just, this kind of goes back to what Megan was talking about and what we're going to probably be talking about more in the next meeting, is we need to find a way to bring the teachers into the conversation in a meaningful way so they feel like they're part of the solution, and so that they feel like there's a level of comfort that we hear them and that we've addressed their concerns and that it's a safe, welcoming environment that they're going back into. And I think we're very close. I think we're headed in the right direction, but I just wanted to put that out there as one of our major goals.
Just quickly on your first point about when the funding would be available. So I don't have the date of annual town meeting in May in front of me, but there'll be an article that we should all attend that meeting, and we always should all attend all of them. But if that article passes, the money will be available immediately through the Finance Committee Reserve Fund transfer process, which means we would get all of our ducks in a row, get on their schedule, and we would go and, like any department in town, say that we have a request for certain funds, and here's our backup and why the work was done. So we were very concerned about having a July 1st hurdle as well, and assuming it passes at town meeting, we will be off and running.
Great.
So that's one update at least I can provide. But and your other points are excellent points, and I'm not going to cut you off, but just briefly, like, this is extremely exciting. Like, this is exactly what we need. It's very similar to when we needed a new high school. We didn't have quite this lead up to it, but this is, what a great group you guys are. So I'm just thrilled. I'm so happy to have sort of an independent board just off and running. You've got a great mix of building expertise, parent expertise, and bringing in the teachers is a key part. So I'm really glad that you recognize and you're going to make sure that happens, and I know you will. So I think the thank yous could go on, and they're very heartfelt. This is going to be an amazing step forward.
And Josh, to that point, I know you had invited Aaron and Michelle to a future meeting of the GM Future Committee. And I think having the two of them together, they can figure out the finances and the staffing time as to when all that can happen, so we can get some concrete ideas out there as far as what is going to happen. And also, I think, to some degree, the questions couldn't be answered yet because we're waiting. You came back with some feedback about the sinks, right? For all along, I've said we have to get rid of the old sinks because they're areas where moisture collects, right? But so once we know the feedback, then we can have a quantitative understanding of what needs to get done over the summer and how quickly it can be done, and what we, and then find out, hopefully, that we have time for staff to come in and move. So I think they're also waiting for this information that you're providing them as well, and having the two of them in a meeting will be perfect to get those answers. And inviting the staff to that meeting so that they can see the plan be developed is a wonderful idea.
And I just wanted to ask if, and this goes to an email that I had seen, I think, today, about parents that are having kids come into the school system this next year. I'm wondering if we can maybe do a big open house, like a week before school starts or something like that, so that we can walk people, walk potential new parents as well as existing parents. We're talking about the teachers and that, but also the parents, to be able to walk them through and have them understand that they're bringing their children to a safe environment.
Yeah, that sounds like something we could, like even a document, like something, like a summary or something, like, oh, I heard there was an issue, and like, what is it? What was the issue, and what's happened since then? I just want to make one more comment about, do you have something? Okay, you can pick your pen up. About the professional services, and so the recommendation to evaluate the roof and the envelope of the building. So so there's still some concern among the community about, the ASAP air quality test had a type of mold where they say that was measured like high and moderate levels, and the description in the report indicates that it could be caused because of wood rot, wood decay. And so then when we start talking about the roof, then people start to assume, okay, is this, so this is a question that's been out there for a long time, and people are, assuming they could be related, which, is relatively, that's the information that they're looking at that point in time. So the professional services, when they evaluate the roof, we would get an answer about that, right? So we could actually address that concern about, okay, so this is a type of mold that measured in the air, and we are suspecting maybe it's because of wood rot, and we would actually get to the bottom of that. So I think that's really helpful to, continue to move on.
That sounds great. It sounds like I don't know the terminology, but it sounds like something you would add to the sort of scope of services, right? Like what you're looking to get from this outside evaluation.
Just to be clear, you'll see in the language that I recommended to FinCom, I say envelope, and there's a key distinction there because the roof may, I say may, air quotes, may test out to be fine and have no issues, but the envelope, the walls, may be another story. So we need to investigate the entire thing. It's no different than your house. Facilities, they're big, but they're not that much different. You need to test the roof, you need to test the walls, make sure the windows aren't leaking. It's the whole picture. So and the other thing is, I don't want anybody thinking that that we've got it all figured out. There's still a long way to go. That's why we need to bring in a professional to look at some of these things. The report that we wrote, it's based on what we can get to and what we can see. There's a lot more that needs to be done, so.
I believe the way you said it was you presented to FinCom on the 8th, and maybe I'm wrong. Or was it?
No, Josh just requested,
sorry.
yeah, as just an individual, he just, as an individual, that if there was money left over from the 610, that a line item be added, that then the remainder could get applied to professional services. And so then when we met after that, we said, okay, so we've made that request in case there's anything that we can apply in that immediate window, but what if there's not? And so this recommendation is basically additional, this line item, we want to evaluate the envelope of the building.
Yeah, at that point, we didn't know if we would get to the school committee before the 22nd, and I was sitting there, I couldn't help myself but to plant that seed just in case.
Yeah, no, that's great.
All right.
Megan, can you just explain a little bit more about the survey and what's the end goal for that, and what kind of questions?
Yeah, so my intention with my initial intention with the survey, and as we have more discussion, maybe we have more additional things that we add to it. But I want the teachers to be comfortable with the structure of the committee and the way in which they have access to the committee and the way that they feel represented on the committee. So, they don't all have the same opinion. So I don't know what, and there's a lot of different concerns. So I want to understand, is it, are they comfortable, saying that if we identify one of our current members as their point of contact, that they would come to them. If there's a process that we need to develop, that they feel comfortable with that. If there's, if there's a teacher that would like to be a representative, if they're comfortable, being in that role and participating. So the intention is that we would have like a bunch of different options for representation, and that they would get to vote on that.
So, because you do already have one.
Yes, right,
Okay.
Terry, yeah, we
Right,
have, Terry is, she works in Fowler,
Right.
right, yeah. And then Deb, is a retired teacher, right? And so we might be fine, but I want to know, yeah, that everybody is comfortable, yeah.
Oh, no, and I think, and I don't, maybe you were saying they might feel comfortable talking to a teacher, like a teacher to
Right,
teacher.
yes,
like-
yes,
But,
right.
whatever you guys come up
Yeah.
with, but I
Right.
like how you're gonna provide options and.
Right,
Yeah.
and if we need to, if we need to say, okay, this is the way we would do it, so that, just so we have a clear expectation of like procedure, and we also had a discussion about, the email address associated with the Green Meadow Future website, so where does that go? So are there like 3 committee members that get that forwarded to them, so that they can focus on the community, comments and people asking questions from the larger community, and we have people that are focused on the teachers' concerns, and so, just segregating responsibility among the members.
Right.
Along those lines, so if I were a teacher, I imagine I'd be anxious to make sure I was able to be involved in the process. So do you know, not that you haven't already moved very fast, but just a sense of when you think you might want to put the survey out to be sure that you're getting their voice included?
I was hoping that we'd have a draft on Tuesday, in our next meeting on Tuesday, and Deb met with, yeah, I know, right?
I don't mean to like push for it because you're doing so, I respect.
It's
my-
really important, it is.
No,
Yeah.
it's so important. It's like the first thing. Yeah, and Deb met with Anne today, and to talk about, because I guess just that we want to understand the best process and the way to organize this,
Yeah.
organize the survey, so that we get the most applicants. So, our participation.
Great.
Thanks.
I do have one other thing that's just more, first of all, just of course, I don't think we could say thank you enough. And anyway, so I won't say further about that at the moment. But the other thing was just the report and making sure now that we appreciate us getting a chance to see it, to consider, and we want to make sure that we get that out to the community. So do we have Bob?
If you don't mind, just,
No, go ahead.
I happen to have a conversation with Courtney, who is clerk? Second, who's great, and I sort of let her know that the Green Meadow Future web page and web pages are gonna be great landing places
Yeah.
for things, and sort of making sure they understand that they'll be able to post things and take a look at the website. How do you think you want it organized? That's gonna be, I think, hopefully a great landing page for a lot of this stuff. And so you'll have, free access to all of that. We'll make sure that happens, so.
That's the town's media relations.
Yeah, I mean, we have yeah.
Okay, yeah, we wanted to talk some more about that too, because I think some people are concerned if there's like a significant cost associated with that new website. And then also, a lot of people in town, they go to the town website, and they're not necessarily associated with the school. So a lot of residents, and they might be interested to know what's going on. So we weren't really sure. We were kind of like,
And you've
what-
had
how do we
you've
need
had
to-
one
how do
meeting,
we-
so don't.
yeah.
I guess, from my perspective, I'm excited that this is starting, and I'm excited that you're also excited to push this forward. But I guess there are a lot of resources that you will be able to access. We do have a lot of paid staff and consulting situations that we've put together. As a school committee, we believed it was a worthy expense to get that website up and running, because we didn't have the internal capacity to do it, and it was clear information was not getting out fast enough. So we can get you some information on what that contract looks like, and contract renewals and negotiations on price and things like that we'll handle. But with input as to whether you think it's useful, and links from maybe the town website. But again, it's really at your second and et cetera meetings, put some thought into it and give us some recommendations, and we can be helpful or connect you to the people, and we'll just start kind of checking all these things off the list, so.
Right. Yeah, and I was just so thrilled with everybody, all the members. It was a really great meeting. It was, yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better meeting, and I was glad that everybody that came too. So, yeah.
Just one thing I have to get off my chest. So I sat down and wrote that entire report in like 7 hours straight, and we were flying. So I apologize for the grammatical and spelling errors. It was imperative that we got it to the appropriate people as soon as possible. So I will clean that up. I know it may not bother you, but it drives me crazy when there's errors in documents. So.
And then one brief conversation I had, maybe it was with Josh, I'm sorry if I forget, was just making it clear that we still know that the responsibility for Green Meadow lies with this committee and Dr. Girardi. So as much as we're excited for what you're contributing, and it's an immense contribution, it's not to pass this issue off. So there's quite a bit that still lies with us, Dr. Girardi specifically, getting facilities, sort of understanding, you know, where why the line was so blurry and how we can firm that up. So all of that work will continue. I know that you've said that you're happy to have residents come and ask you questions there, and I think that's great. I just want to be cognizant that we are not pushing too much on you folks. So in a very good way, please push back and say, you know what, this seemed like our thing, but really we think it's a Dr. Girardi thing or a school committee thing or a town thing. Like, please push back as well. So
We'll be aware of that too. Because it's just important, but we distinctly don't want to also, someone had mentioned last time, it sounds like we were like, okay, go off, do your thing, bye-bye, good luck. And we're distinctly here to also support and provide whatever we can to help. So please do make sure to let us know. And I think that we also, for everyone to understand, for the time being, it sounded like you were going to be able to have someone here every meeting to be able to give an update as you have to offer. If it turns out that you haven't met or there's nothing to update, then we could just forego that.
Yeah, and I think if at any point in time, I mean, we have a lot of members, so I think we can at least get one person here, and if we can't, we can always provide a written update. Yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Excellent.
And whenever you need us, if you need to set someone at your meet, you know, that let us know.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Thank the committee. This is amazing. Thank you so much. All right. Dr. Girardi, you're all set with your report? That's it. AJ, student representative report. We have AJ Noble with us tonight and almost every.
I'll just move this back over here. Sorry. So the first thing you'll notice is obviously I'm alone tonight. Pat is not here because him and the rest of band and course are on their way to DC right now. They left early this morning, and I just got an update. They are not there yet, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they're in Maryland right now, but they will make their way by tonight. On top of that, so on the seniors part, we just had a meeting yesterday, and it's one of our final meetings, just getting ready for the end of the year and senior trips and stuff like that. And one of the big things is one of our last fundraisers, a Savers fundraiser. So what that is basically we're taking good condition clothes and shoes and stuff like that, and we are donating to them to a Savers Club. Our goal is to raise at least $1,000, which is close to 200 pounds of stuff we actually need to bring. So we're just going to look all over for help for that. And we're doing a lot of collections on April 25th, in 2 weeks from now, because that night is Powder Puff. I believe it's from 6 to 8, which I'm pretty sure is also the next school committee meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
I'll check. Hold on.
But I encourage as many people as possible to go see that, regardless. And I know Dr. Girardi mentioned it near the beginning of the meeting, but we do have Greta, new therapy dog. I know a lot of students were excited to meet her on, I believe it was Monday, during lunch. I know a lot of students were surprised to see a dog, but it was a huge positive response. Last Thursday, National Honor Society helped around town, so I know I worked with Mr. Costello, or I personally didn't work with Mr.
You performed a miracle at Fowler.
We did various things at Town Hall. We weeded and mulched the front. You'll notice there is new mulch there. At Fowler, we helped clean out one of the storage rooms, and at the fire station, we helped paint one of the rooms there. And this past Monday, we cleaned the windows down at the high school. So that is our big project. I'm just gonna move this back a little farther. That was our big project for the year. I know there's something coming up in June for at least the juniors. I won't be a part of that, but I'm looking forward to see what they're going to be able to pull off later this year. And the last thing was the annual father-daughter dance. And WAVM is going to be helping out with that. That will be the day after Powder Puff, the 26th on Friday. And I encourage anyone to come along, help support the cause. I do not know exactly what time it starts at. I think it's 6:30, around that time frame. But that's my student representative report for this week. Any questions?
So you mentioned the Savers fundraiser. So what's the deadline for that, and where can people drop stuff off?
So if you're able to talk with any senior, they by chance might just have their bag on hand. We all have bags that we were given at the meeting. The big pickup's going to be before Powder Puff. That's our plan, because a lot of parents, we were planning we're going to go to that, so that'd be a lot of donations right there. By the way, if you do donate, you get a free admission into Powder Puff. It is $2 per person, I'm very certain. And then our big drop-off's going to be May 15th. So really, if you can just find any of the right seniors who actually have, like, I know I have my bag in my car right now, so I'd be willing to take anything. But besides that,
And then how often is Greta the dog coming by? That sounds fun.
I have no knowledge of that. I didn't know she was going to be there on Monday.
So I think she's going to be coming once monthly just to start with, and then we're going to increase it next year, especially around stressful times like exam periods. Yeah, so we're going to develop it. For now, it'll be once a month.
And so what, does she go to a room or something, and then the kids are invited
Yeah, there's a
in,
nice
or-
area.
There's a nice area by the art room
Yeah.
that students were able to line up right there and then just be able to, interact with Greta.
During
And
the
I know,
lunch period, after lunch, right?
yeah, or during lunch, like during that block. But I know a lot of students will need that next month, given that AP tests are starting up. So that's pretty much it.
That's a lot.
It is, what's the pulse of the senior class right now? How do you think people are feeling?
Ready to be done is a big one. We have, a lot of people are starting to keep count now, which I know isn't the best sign, but 29 days left, so. I know a lot of people are starting to really form their senior projects, although I'm fairly certain Jordan Cedeno has her senior project actually tomorrow. She's doing a presentation. I could be wrong about that. It may not be related to that, but I'm fairly certain it is. But I know a lot are going to be during the beginning of May. That's when mine's due. But again, May 17th, that's our big day where pretty much the seniors are done for the year, because that's when senior project, our big presentation is, and then we wrap up. But we're excited. We're gonna keep trucking through. I don't think any of the students are really gonna stop until that point, but we're looking forward to the end of the year.
Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.
Does it belong?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is a strategic update on multi-tiered systems of support. There's a handout in the back, a multi-page handout that might be very helpful. And then Assistant Superintendent Gaudet and Carol Gahan, Director of Student Services, are here to present. These are long-awaited topics. We've been very interested to hear about progress and updates, so thank you both for being here tonight, and I'll let you take it away.
Absolutely. So we have three sort of sub-presentations. This is part of our biannual strategic plan update. That, so biannually we present sort of what we're going to be working on and where we're going. So we wanted to follow up on our inclusive practices that support all students pillar by presenting on our co-teaching
You want me to just tell me when
Okay.
we go? Oh, okay.
The inclusive practices that support all students, which, will that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Which will be involved in universal design for learning and curriculum development, and then we will be, that's all right, don't worry about it.
Cannot be identified.
That's fine. We'll just do it.
We tried.
Click continue. Yeah, great.
What's that sound? Go away, go away.
And for the superior academic experience, focusing on the multi-tiered systems of support, which are both major initiatives at the state level. So if you want to hit the next button.
Down, right?
So co-teaching, we presented on this in in the fall, I believe, and then in last spring as well, that we had implemented this year. You can go to the next slide. We had implemented this year, and just to reiterate, this is from our presentation last spring, that what we're looking for with universal design for learning is that instead of having everyone have the same thing, which is the box all the way over on the left where they're all standing and one student is unable to see the game, or to provide different things so the students can have access to seeing the game. Universal design for learning really indicates that you modify the environment in order to make students successful so that they can all access from where they are. And so our co-teaching model, we feel, fits in that sort of capacity, working in that way. You can go to the next slide. I wanted to reemphasize what co-teaching is, and essentially what we're looking at here is two teachers with different areas of specialty. One is in learning experience and learning specialist, and one is a content expert, and both of those teachers work together as equals in the classroom space in order to make sure that all students with diverse needs are achieving. That includes co-planning, co-assessment, and co-instruction of lessons. Go on, next one. Our current program this year, we had two teachers in each classroom space. They were there full-time all day. One was a general education teacher and one was a special educator in grades 1 and 4. We started those as the introductory grade that we would have some data on all of our students for, being in first grade, and then the introductory grade at Fowler. And then within those, they've been in the classroom all day. To present some data on the co-taught model, and this is by no means inclusive of all of the data that we have, both anecdotal and statistical, but we wanted to show you a range of our assessments to give a sense of how our students are doing. So we obviously didn't identify the other sections here, but what you can see over on the left is the Symphony Math score. Symphony Math is an assessment we use. It's an assessment we use to look at number sense within all of our students. We were finding that number sense in our MCAS exams was an area that we were particularly weak, which is not uncommon. That is the foundations as phonics and word sense as the foundations of literacy. So we're using Symphony Math in order to assess that. And what you can see here, this is the growth score, or the growth in the score from the fall to the winter of the classrooms, and the second bar in from the left, that is our co-taught piece where they had just under 70 points of growth within there. DRA is one of our literacy assessments that we use to get a variety of data on our students. And so what we provided you here is a range of looking at, for the October and the January assessments, who was at benchmark, one level below benchmark and or multiple levels below benchmark. And again, the orange is the co-taught that you can see there. And really what we're looking for here is that we see incredible growth in both of those in the at or above benchmark. I believe they went from somewhere from 8 to 11 students, or an increase of 25% of students achieving at benchmark. Benchmark is not the be-all and end-all of the data. It's not about achieving benchmark. It's about moving students from their skills to where they are. This is just a snapshot of data that we were able to show in looking in that capacity. We also looked at grade 4 data. For that, we chose to take a look at STAR. So this is the STAR, this is one version of the STAR math data. Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't the STAR math data. This is both reading and math. The type, no, it's fine, you can leave it there. So reading, GE is grade level equivalency, and you see the change in the grade level equivalency from the beginning of the year until the assessment in the winter, and you see that they have grown 1.7 grade level equivalents within that co-taught classroom. So that's over a year's, almost 2 years worth of growth prior to the year ending, which is an incredible success. And then the percentile proficiency on the math over on the right side, you can see over there, again, the orange bar being the co-taught classroom. We're seeing a percentile change of 20 points within that co-taught classroom space. So again, some very good numbers that we're looking at within this space. I had one, go ahead to the next one. I had one conversation with someone who said, oh, so that means it's working. And I think, you know, because I'm a details person, I think what we can say is that the students are learning, and they're learning incredibly well within that classroom space. It's not to say that that is the only space in which any of our students are learning. It's just showing some really incredible scores for some of our kids. So this is the grade 4 assessment of student growth percentile. If you've heard any of my MCAS presentations over the last several years, student growth percentile is my favorite statistic because I think that it shows where students are, and you see that how students are improving. You see that our co-taught classroom is improving at the same level as our other classrooms within that grade. And then the reading, this was something that all of us had, you know, sort of wide eyes on. The change in the scaled score, an increase of 138 points from the fall to the winter assessment. So again, I'm sorry, there were 3 assessments in this piece with the STAR. And the math change in the scaled score of 85. And we have some other statistics in the handout that we have of co-teaching by the numbers that we were looking at there. We did also ask our co-taught teams, Carol, if you want to go to the next slide, to provide us with some feedback. We did have our first grade co-taught team here in the fall. We are fortunate, and I thank you so much. Where they are? So they're here.
They're here.
Are they
They're
here somewhere?
hiding.
Michelle and Debbie, we're here. We're thankful. There we are. There we go. We are thankful for Michelle and Debbie to be here. That's our 4th grade team. And this is essentially a snapshot of the successes that they have. And if you'll humor me by reading some of them, just because we have some folks in the back that may not be able to see. Having 2 teachers allows them to have an in-depth understanding of what each child needs and prevents student weakness from being overlooked. There's more integrated Tier 2 instruction, resulting in fewer transitions for students. There's consistency and carryover of instruction. There's more time for teachers to discuss student need and have time to plan effectively. Flexible groupings based on student progress, and more targeted small group is possible. Teachers piggybacking on one another's teaching styles to support student learning. And I think both teams agreed that that was essentially a snapshot of what they were seeing and what they were feeling within their instructional work that they were doing. We do have some areas to work on for year 2, and so we structured these in a couple different ways. We wanted to make sure that we were providing the time for the co-teaching teams to be able to be effective in their presentation. All of the research indicates that co-teaching is only effective when you prioritize common planning time or common preparation time. So we are working with the different structures at the different buildings to make sure that those times are protected from other meetings throughout the time, so that the teachers can be working together. And that's, you know, essentially making sure that the common preparation times, that's a more detailed version of that the common preparation times that are protected are identified so that IEP meetings or other meetings aren't you know, scheduled on those days. Obviously, we know in certain times of the year, things get incredibly busy and people need to do, you know, different things. But really, from an administrative standpoint, making sure we are being upfront and protecting those times so that they can have that time to work together. And then obviously we know that community perception has been a challenge in terms of what the co-teaching model is and what it is not. And we will just continue to provide the data that we have and review the data as, you know, our administrative team was looking at some pieces, and none of us are going to put forward a program that is not being successful for students because we are all here to make sure students are successful. So we will continue to do that and communicate the program development as it goes forward. I did want to provide Debbie and Michelle an opportunity to share any stories, if they wanted to. Do you want to come up to the mic?
Just look at them.
So, I think the one thing that I don't want to say struggle with, but the one thing that I guess I'm going to say bothers me the most is the perception of our classroom. Like, oh, you guys have that class or that group, or you have those kids, and that is bothersome to me as both a teacher and a parent. And why I say that is because both Michelle and I, we work so hard during the day, and we work very well together. The start of the year, it was a rough start at the beginning of the year. We had a teacher that left, a great teacher. I miss her. I'm living, I'm able to keep going. And we were able to find Michelle. I don't know how we found her. I really don't, because she's been such a great asset to the co-teaching classroom, to me. I mean, she brings so much wealth and knowledge in the special ed piece that I don't have, and I wish I did. I don't. She has it, thankfully. So being the two teachers in the classroom, we're able to service not only just the special ed students. I can work with a group that are higher flyers. She can work with the group that maybe not so much. We can work with the middle group. So when parents, when you hear stuff like, oh, I don't want my kids, and I've had people that are close to me say, I would never want my kid in your class. I'm like, oh, thank you. I feel great. But it's like, if you came in, and I welcome anybody who wants to come in and see what we do, and I'm not afraid to have people walk in and see. We service all kids, and we can do so many more things. And yeah, it's been a challenging year, but looking forward, we have so many things that we know we can do. I mean, Michelle and I have only been together, we were just talking about this the other day. It's not even been that long. It's been like 3 months or something. It doesn't seem like 3 months. Not that you're like, oh, I've been with her forever. Like that. But like, we've only been together a very little bit of time. So like thinking forward, okay, we have all of next year. We can start X, Y, and Z on day one. And like I think we've done some, I mean.
Amazing stuff.
So, right. I mean,
Amazing.
we've done some good things. Yeah, could they be better? Of course they could be. There's always room for improvement. But I think starting next year, like, I'm excited to see where we can go after another year, like a full starting, like, from the ground up kind of thing. So.
We can talk about this outside this setting if you're more comfortable, but I'd be curious if you're seeing the feelings more from the parents. I'm just hoping it's not among the children, you know what I mean, the students. Generally this stuff is the parents in general.
So we talked, I have obviously I'm not going to name names, but we have a boy who used to be with a para all last year, kind of following like him around, and one of his friends said, hey, you don't have that teacher following you around anymore. Like, and he's very comfortable, and he's made tremendous growth. And I look forward to working. He's a funny kid, and he's doing really, really well. I don't even know what your question was at this point.
No.
No idea what you just asked.
So I had heard similar when we talked about this a year ago, and we talked about the pros and cons, and where we've seen successful models and what makes them successful, and what successes might we expect over time. We knew there might be some parents who had trepidation about trying something new, and I heard it sort of on the playground, we'll say, right? And I had this feeling, and I still have this feeling, that at some point, people are going to be fighting to get in that classroom.
I hope
so. And I know our plan is to
It's-
increase accessibility to more co-taught classrooms over time, as long as we're seeing steps forward.
Right.
And I know the key is great teachers, like everything. And we have great teachers, and I really love that this was launched in a voluntary way. I just think that there can't be enough kudos for taking on something brand new, when you might have some pushback in the community. We've all been there. So you guys have been amazing, and I don't mean to single you out, because I've heard amazing things about Miss Masella as
she's
well.
wonderful.
But just going through two colleagues in 1 year on the first year,
Yeah,
you've done yeoman's work. So thank you, and thank you, Michelle. We're very happy you're here as well, so.
And I'll add, we actually did have parents who requested your classroom because of the strength of the teachers. So I just want you to know that I did get that feedback. So there are some perceptions that are very positive, even from the very beginning.
And I think it's just fear of the unknown. You know, I've talked to parents too, and it's like, you don't have to decide to have your child go there if you're uncomfortable, but there's so many great things going on. It's just, and they're assimilating the special needs students maybe with distractions, you know, like nothing's going to get done because more attention is spent on the special
And
ed,
switches.
which we all know doesn't happen.
Right.
It's helping everybody rise.
Right, and I think it's more distracting to the kids and the teachers when kids are, it's a revolving door. They're in and out and in and out, and we don't know who's coming and going, and they don't know if they're coming or going, and they're not. So it's an easier, it flows better, it works. I mean, my opinion, obviously, but I don't know.
Fantastic. Thank you for volunteering.
Can I ask you one other question? Do you feel like, we talked before, which was fascinating to me, that, not in a good way, that from the student's perspective, they don't know, they just know they have two teachers. Is that still how?
I think so.
Yeah.
I do. It's kind of that, we don't have certain kids that only come to me or only come to her. They're kind of like, whatever. I mean, she's always working with a group. I'm always working with a group. It's not a set group of students. We have your typical students that'll come up and be like, just go plunk themselves like in front, like, I want to kind of work with you too.
Yeah.
Which is great. So I don't think it's like that at all. And I don't think it has been either from the start, even in September when it was Tammy. And we try to make it so it's not like, we don't have certain things that I teach and she teaches. It's sort of, and which is another really good thing about Michelle. It's not, it kind of flows with her. We just kind of, she'll start something and maybe I'll finish it or whatever. You know, it's not like she's only teaching math, I'm only teaching ELA kind of thing. So, yeah.
Do you feel, Deb, that you're getting enough, I guess, with professional development? I know we talked about that at the beginning of the year, I think, but I hear that you're getting common planning time between yourselves.
We are, and that's nothing, we have not struggled with that at all here at Fowler. I know our schedule looks very different than Green Meadow in the high school or whatever, but we never have IEP meetings or we're never hold it during preps. We're always able to collaborate together, so that hasn't been an issue at all, so I'm thankful for that. We did do some PD prior, I want to say, so at the I don't have a very good memory, but I don't know if it was the beginning of the year or maybe the end of, so we did get a little bit. Could we have more? And we probably would as time goes on, but I mean, we're good. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Want to emphasize that this works because we have amazing staff, and I will sing their praises, and Ms. Fioretti and Ms. Boardman's praises as well in terms of the passion that they bring, and I know all of our teachers bring passion to their students. The pride that I heard from the fourth grade team, both with Michelle and Debbie, but then also at the beginning of the year when they were working so hard together and the students were having incredible success, and you saw some statistical data that shows that, you know, they believe in these kids, and the number one indicator of whether a student will grow and learn in school is how much their teacher believes in them, and these all of our teachers are doing it. These four in particular, I get to have a really close conversation with about it, and it just gives me so much pride that we have this, and I would fight for my kids to be in it because they are just absolutely amazing with this piece. I don't know if you go to the next slide. We are learning for what we want to do, and Mary, I'll just address the professional development piece in talking with the two teams and in talking with the folks who we are looking at rolling this out with for next year. Obviously, there'll be at different points, one group having had a year's experience and another group being starting out. So we'll be doing sort of both and, where we'll do the introductory, what co-teaching is and how you make your model effective. And then in talking with the folks who've been doing it for a year, really looking and diving into the different models of co-teaching, because there are 5 different models, and when you use them and how they're effective and why they would be effective. So really getting into the details of co-teaching at its core is where our year 2 staff, if we want to say it that way, will be getting some professional development in that capacity. And that will happen in a variety of different ways. So we'll be looking to grow from the classes from 2 to 4 next year. We'll be evolving it from into second grade and hopefully into fifth grade. This is not a cohort model, and I want to emphasize that the students will not be moving as a cohort from year to year as our Spanish immersion students do. The placement of students in these classes happen the same way as placements in any other classes, with a specific understanding of IEP needs within that space. We're looking at reducing our programmatic ratio. We had published last year when we were putting this forward that we'd be looking at 50% of special education students, as that was what we were, the recommendation that we were getting from other areas. As we have continued conversations with our colleagues and looking at, frankly, what we've been doing, we're closer to, I think that in the co-teaching by the numbers, we're at 36%. So we're looking to go more between 30 and 35%, which is, again, closer to the actuals of where we wound up this year. One of the things that we spoke about with both of the teams is sort of where the most effective time was being spent within the co-taught model, and obviously literacy and math being so incredibly important at the elementary level, those are the longest blocks of time. What we are going to look to do for next year, and there's a couple different reasons for this, is to have the co-teaching happening during the literacy and the math blocks during that time. Again, we will make sure we're protecting that common planning time and that common preparation time. And I'm using those two phrases distinctly because they are different in terms of what they do. And then we'll be able to have the special education teacher use their specialized skill set in order to provide services for students in other areas. One example, we are 2 co-taught teachers down at Green Meadow are Wilson certified, and we are looking for both of them to be able to provide Wilson tutoring to students at Green Meadow in order to provide that that type of intervention that we know we need to provide down there. And so we're doing something similar up here. The reason I say hopefully into 5th grade, as of right now, we have looked at groupings for students with liaisons, special education liaisons. Mr. Barth has done an incredible job building the schedule earlier than we have ever had it. And I'm so thankful for that, because that means that we're able to really look at program changes. And so we are anticipating that we will be able to utilize our current staffing that we have in order to put a co-taught classroom within the 5th grade, and it would be on a team, co-taught team, I should say, within the 5th grade. As Mr. Barth builds the remainder of the schedule over April vacation, and as we begin to plug students into spaces, as you mentioned, Dawn, the fact that this is a voluntary piece, we will need to hire for that piece. We have a retirement that is happening, and so those teachers will be on that interview team. So there's a lot of sort of moving parts for that next component, whereas at the Green Meadow, we have 2 teachers that are currently already working together. So there's a few different moving parts for 5th grade that we are hopeful that will happen, but Carol and Chris Kitchell have looked at, sort of both iterations of whether it's a co-taught or whether it's a traditional inclusion model, and we're able to do that piece. So we're excited about the evolution for next year. We will continue to evaluate with the data that we have. I think is that it for that one? I think so. Are there any questions on co-taught? Do we want to take this one by one instead of waiting till the end?
I think that would be great, so.
I do, yeah, I was just going to say that. I do want to thank Debbie and Michelle for coming tonight, and we do have to go early, so thank you so much, and both of you as well. Our principals for being here. They have to be here bright and early.
Michelle wanted to add more.
Oh, you want to add more? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yes, please join us. And welcome once again. I've heard nothing but great things, and I got to see you doing yoga at Fine Arts Night, so.
Yeah.
I'm still talking about yoga, so, or actually, I should say my son is.
I just wanted to say, I came from a district where the co-teaching model had been happening for years, and I had seen it change and evolve over time. So there's many ways to do co-teaching effectively, and I think, as you saw in that particular slide about challenges, that it takes time to build that co-teaching relationship. Some of the things that Debbie and I have talked about is this idea of parallel teaching, which is where you can kind of split the class in half and teach the same lesson, but I might be providing more scaffolds and supports than Debbie would. So that's just kind of one idea. And what's nice about that is you're taking a group of, say, 20 and even providing more small group support with the benefit of 2 teachers. So there's lots of different ways moving forward that we can approach this, and I think it's going to take that time and dedication on our part.
And hopefully, I don't know enough about how things run within the schools, but hopefully you're getting the support from your principals and your assistant superintendent and having these conversations, because we want to make sure, that you do have a say, bringing that expertise from your last district and just sort of everything you're all bringing to it already. So I
Yes.
hope that that's a
Yeah,
collaborative
yeah,
effort, and we
definitely.
certainly, publicly support a collaborative effort on that.
Yes, it definitely is. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, absolutely. For our staff that need to be here tomorrow bright and early, thank you so much. Have a great night. So co-teaching questions.
Yep.
Remind me how many are in a class?
This year we have 19 in each class. That was not, we didn't intentionally pick to have 19 in each class. That's the way it worked out. We have, again, 36% of those students are students identified with as special education, and we'll be looking, so what I did in looking for the number of students for next year, you'll see that those are approximate numbers, assuming we get the classrooms and assuming those things. I looked at the class averages, and they should be around 20 for each of that grade, so that was where that number came from.
No, sorry.
Nope, go.
On a slightly different track, I didn't see anything, obviously, we didn't see anything in terms of a budget request, so you're able to do this within your existing operating budget? for next year?
Currently, we are able to do this within our existing operating budget. The question becomes at the 5th grade at Fowler, whether or not we are able to do the groupings, again, in the way that we think we can, based on where we are at in the schedule, and then separately with the hiring process as well. But yes, we are currently looking to do this within the existing structure.
Well, that's amazing, so.
I had a question about I know that has been some talk about not having paras in because of the special educator. And I heard Debbie say that she found, at least with one of the children, that it has been a great model
Yes.
for them. Can you just address a little bit about how that works and the not having the para in there?
Sure. Carol.
So a lot of times with our service delivery, when we're talking about inclusion services, we're talking about a special education teacher / para, so either or. So what we found in this case is that, with the co-teaching model, the students that might have had a para with them in all classes for behavioral attention supports was not needed this year, and the student has had wonderful success. So, it proved to me what I felt I already knew, that that teachers can provide the supports by structuring lessons differently, by having some of the smaller groups, being able to scaffold some of the things. So this my feeling is that within the co-teaching model, the students are becoming more independent and less dependent on a paraprofessional that might be cueing them to pay attention to the teacher, to turn the page or read those directions again. Those are just very basic, simple examples.
And I think it's important to note too, because again, we are making modifications based on our experience this year. All student needs in terms of specials, if we do not have a special education teacher in the classroom during the science and social studies block, and there is a need for paraprofessional support, those will absolutely be happening. So none of this is taking away that component. I do think, one of the things that we're hearing from the teachers is that it does take away, because as amazing as our paraprofessional educators are, you heard from that one student that said, oh, you don't have, Miss So-and-so following you. They know that is there and that's different for different children. So this is for this student in particular, and I remember talking about him when about the student when the student was in second grade. Perception matters a whole lot, and to see the reduction in behaviors, to see the pride that the student is bringing to the work.
The academic achievement as well.
It's just awe-inspiring, and if we can do this for all of our kids and increase their independence, I know that that's the goal of special education, is increasing independence, and that's the goal of all of our staff. So it's really inspiring to see that working.
Sort of a follow-up question on the process for the co-teaching. If parents have questions, and I don't want to, I'm not necessarily trying to understand placement and scheduling, because those might always be out of grasp for me personally. But where's the right place to direct parents who have questions about whether this may or may not be a good fit? And again, not saying that that's how it works, but is it your office? Is it Carol? Is it the building? Mike Barth for Fowler, for example.
Right.
So,
I think it depends on the kind of question it is. So I would say most likely it's either between the principal or myself, or the team chair. So in this building, it's Chris Kitchell. At Green Meadow, it's Patty Tuhig. So it sort of depends on the kind of question that it is.
If a parent doesn't know, like if they, what
What
would be the best place
if the
for them to
parent
start?
doesn't know, then if the parent has a child on an IEP, I would say they should start with the team chair, either Patty Tuhig or Chris Kitchell. If the parent has a student that is not identified with special needs, then I would say the principal would be the best place to start.
thanks, that's really helpful.
So in planning for next year, how are students selected or volunteered or that kind of thing to make up the classes?
Yeah. What we're doing is the same thing that we've done in other years and what we do for the groupings anyway. The special ed teachers look at their students, they know their students, they know who works well, what teaching style would be well suited for them. They know good matches, bad matches, as far as students working with other students that when they're together in a class, it's not a real good mix. So that's how we do it for all grades. And so that's, I would say, grades K through 8. Those are the things that we consider. And so that's how we would do it.
Okay. And so, just imagining that certain students are chosen for, the current first grade and the current fourth grade and then second grade and that. Are you going to then reach out to the parents to see if this is a model that they're comfortable with, or to sort of have a parent informational night?
So in terms of parent communication, that's something that we're working on. And one of the reasons that I've emphasized in multiple buildings that we need the schedules done before the end of the year is I would like to be able to have those class lists out so that the teachers in all classes can contact their parents and families. Obviously, we know that things change over the year. If we have significant number of move-outs over the summer, if there's a significant number of move-outs in one classroom, things will be adjusted. But that is something that we've heard from the community that would help ease the transition. So in all classes, we're hoping to do that. In this case, what we would be looking at is that the teachers would be communicating out in that capacity. We'd be happy to have, additional parent information nights. But we're really looking at this as, sort of no different than placement into the other classes and into the other ways. And we know parents have very specific and good intentions with requests for what teachers their students wind up with. And we will continue to communicate that all of our teachers, do really great work and continue to make sure that that's happening. But yes, we can absolutely do additional parent information nights. One of the things that, this is sort of an aside, that I'm looking for to happen within our buildings that has not happened before, and again, because schedules are being done earlier, we'll be able to do that, where we're going to be able to get a communication from the building principal out to the classroom or to the grades and say, here's what's coming up next for you in this grade. And so just increasing that communication from our you know, from our principals about what the students can experience, and then allowing for that communication from our teachers to our families so they can begin to form those relationships.
Excellent, yeah. I just, and again, it's because this is at the infancy stage. That's why I thought if we could do something specifically for this, and it would be great to have some parents that have had, you know, I'm thinking of parents that might be kind of hesitant and not sure that's the right fit, whereas you guys are saying this is the perfect fit, to maybe have a few parents there too that have actually experienced this year, I think could be really helpful, so.
Yep, we can look at ways that we can communicate with families around that.
So I just want to say kudos around the communication and the scheduling. We've been talking we've been talking about this for a little while, but with the scheduling piece and hearing that from the community. And I know what had to line up in order for that to be able to happen. So that's just an aside. And then I just wanted to comment, some people will know, some may not, depending on anyone that may not be, but we have a CPAC. We're liaisons to Mauro and I are liaisons to CPAC, and this would seem like a great place where we could to have more discussion and just be able to also, they could then also help educate the community. So we do a check-in with the chairs of the CPAC, and then there's also a monthly meeting that they have with Carol and Charles and administrative, and we all get together to be able to make sure we understand what's going on. So that would be a great place to be able to talk about that too.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure. Section 2. So this is something I'm incredibly excited about because this isn't an update on an initiative that we've already started. This is something that we have been talking about and that districts struggle with. And it's the idea of how we provide a superior academic experience for all students. And while we know how to do that for a certain type of student within K-12 education and higher education, consistently in this profession, we struggle to make sure that all students are having all of their needs met. And as we've heard from community and from all of the research, those needs are simply increasing, and the complexity of those needs are increasing. So our multi-tiered, or our tiered systems of support are derived not by accident from the state Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education multi-tiered systems of support, which you can see the graphic sort of over here. And essentially the concept is that teaching and learning doesn't happen within a classroom space in a vacuum. That in order to support all students' needs, you need to take into account the complexity that you see referenced here. And I won't dive deeply into it, but there's a lot of information on the state website about that. What I did want to dive into is on the next slide, where I have pulled out and highlighted the interior, which is really the work that happens within our schools, between our administrators, our teachers, and our students, and making sure that all students are able to be successful. And these pieces around in the gray are the components that need to happen. And then you need to have flexible tiers to be able to meet students' needs. You've heard me discuss this where, you know, between 70 and 80% of your students should be able to meet expectations, whether it's behavioral or academic, with that tier 1 support. But we know that just because, you know, I'll use my example educationally, I like to talk and read, and I was pretty good at it when I was in middle school, and I tested into the high ELA group when I was going into high school, which meant that because it was a small school, I had to be in the high math group, and it was into 7th grade. Sorry, it wasn't even high school. And I was the kid who probably should have been in a more supported math class because I could not figure out why X was X. It just made no sense to me. And everyone was looking at me like, why are you asking that? And that's been something that I've lived with. You know, I joke about my math phobia. So we know that kids are not sort of, you know, omnipotent in their ability to do all of the things. So what we need to provide are multiple tiers of support, both academically and social emotionally, so that all of our students can be successful. I'm incredibly proud of the work that Carol and her team have done in both of these initiatives to be able to meet all of our students' needs. And so I think we're going to switch because
We're going to switch.
you're next.
So what I'm happy about is that we're really starting to make some real positive progress in these, the tiered 3, the intensive supports. So to start with, our supporting students with the language-based disabilities. So here at Fowler, we piloted a language-based classroom. We were able to, find a fabulous teacher and that had the experience, the training that we needed. But for the language-based program here, it's designed for a cohort of students with language-based learning disabilities who require a substantially separate language-based program to maximize their learning. I want to talk a little bit about the substantially separate. The state defines the substantially separate as being removed from the general ed classroom at least 60% of the time. So these are students that really need some specially designed instruction a good portion of their day. The specially designed instruction, which is evidence-based, would be in the areas of decoding, encoding, reading fluency, vocabulary, reading comprehension, writing, executive functioning skills, all blended together to make sure that all learning modalities are engaged. So our current structure this year, what we've done with our teacher, Linda Muldoon, she is providing the specially designed instruction for a group of students in reading, ELA, math, some academic support per their IEPs. So we've looked at IEPs, we looked at their learning needs, their learning styles. These are students that all have a language-based disability, and that's how we came to having Linda work with them. So again, the same sentence, that the specially designed instruction are in those areas. The staffing for this program is a teacher like Linda. She's a certified moderate special ed teacher. That's a requirement. But one of the things that Linda brings to the table is that she has a lot of training in programs such as Wilson. You don't come out of getting your bachelor's or your master's with these following programs. It's extra training. A lot of it is outside of the school day for the most part. So she has Wilson, she has Orton Gillingham, 2 levels, and is working on becoming a trainer. She has I think some Linda Mubel. She's got some Project Read, which has some wonderful reading comprehension of nonfiction and framing your thoughts. I believe she's worked with Ravo. And she's a certified reading specialist. That's just like the cherry on the top of the sundae. So I feel, as a director, very blessed to have found somebody like her. As I feel extremely lucky and blessed that we found Michelle Lasala. Also with this program, we have contracted with a doctorate level school psychologist, and she has a specialty in learning disabilities. You've heard about school psychologists or psychologists that have a specialty in clinical psychology. That's sort of all the emotional, mental health areas. She has, her name is Dr. Roberta Green, but what she has is she has levels of education beyond a doctorate, and it's specializing in neuropsychology and learning disabilities. And also with a good language-based program, you have the consultation of a speech and language therapist. So this year we've had Mary Finnegan working with Linda, and I believe she's going in there, I think it's about once a week. So it's nice to have that extra level of expertise from a speech and language therapist. That their training is very different from a special ed's training. So moving forward, everybody in their packet has a page and a half little flyer on sort of a program description. I've only put little snippets in this presentation. So who is this program designed to fit? The students need to be average to above average in cognitive abilities. They might have vulnerabilities in processing or memory. Their primary disability is specific learning in the areas of reading and writing. They don't have to have the term dyslexia. The student does not present with significant behavioral or emotional concerns, and that the student has not made satisfactory progress despite other district interventions. What those district interventions might be would be some Title I supports, also having supports in our more traditional methods used by our special ed teachers. That they've made progress, or they've sort of flattened out, but they're not quite making the progress we would expect because of their average to above average cognitive abilities. So that's the profile of student, but the entrance criteria is the student absolutely needs an IEP, but again, the majority of the services are in that pull-out section, removed that section of other than the general education classroom. So they might have all of their ELA and all of their math. Those would be students that we would consider. Maybe they have a need for pull-out history because history is so language-based. Maybe it's also science, but it's the requirement is more that the student's IEP team has already said this student needs a lot of pull-out support. And then if we look at outside of the IEP team, when we look at placement of students, if we notice that the student's progress isn't where we would expect it to be, this could be sort of another higher level of supports for that student, indicating as a second entrance criteria that the student just needs more intensive supports. Exit criteria would be based on by the IEP team, because the IEP team in the discussion of the student's progress is feeling like the student has made progress enough to begin to have the student go out into the general ed classes for more push-in or inclusion in general ed based on their progress and their ability to access grade level text without with less intensive supports. And then to make the comparison to Green Meadow, we don't have a language-based classroom at Green Meadow. What my thinking has been, is that if we get things really rolling in Green Meadow with being able to catch kids earlier, get them some intensive supports earlier, then my hope is that 5 years down the road, we might not need the language-based classroom here, and it might be able to be moved down to Green Meadow. Some might say, well, why isn't that already got down in Green Meadow? We're trying to help the students that are here right now that are struggling. Down at Green Meadow, we now have 2 special education teachers who are level 1 certified Wilson. And Wilson is one of the evidence-based programs which is suited for students with specific learning disabilities in reading. So, so that's what we have this year, and, what we're looking at next year is those 2 teachers spending more of their time with the reading instruction, and that the other 2 special ed teachers there would take on more of the math, the social skills, that kind of thing, so that these 2 teachers can focus on the Wilson reading. I also think that these 2 teachers are going to be doing the co-teaching. So, So, and now this, we're gonna, oh, questions, shucks. Okay.
I, for one, would love to see your long-term plan between now and the next 5 years, because it would help
Yes.
us with budgeting. Also, I'm sure that there's going to be a period of overlap and that kind of thing.
Yes,
So,
yes, I can work on that.
Speaking for myself, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So,
So I appreciate your laying this out and putting together this flyer to help. I think one thing, I also appreciate understanding the definition, because I know there's been some confusion and just concern around making sure that parents have the language the frame to understand what is happening and compared to. So I appreciate helping to understand what substantially separate means. So that's very helpful. And I know that this is something that concurrently, we're also going to be talking with the CPAC about, just to make sure that we're helping to avoid confusion and being proactive with that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate all that.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the monthly meetings with CPAC. And I think this is one of the discussions for our next meeting. I did invite Mike Barth to come, because he has just done this amazing job with scheduling, that even I can look at it and see how it can work. Because I think there are questions out there of how, if this language-based classroom, if this teacher is working with multiple grades, how is she going to be able to do that? So we were able, just be the visual he created for the schedule. So I asked him if he would come. He responded already to say that he'll be here.
That's great. That would be very.
So that, because he's the guru, I'm not. I have to, so, at least in scheduling.
We all have our lanes. We all have our lanes.
That's right, we all have our strengths and weaknesses.
I know that there was a question about if you do have a child that's on an IEP that qualifies for this 60% separate classroom, how does that work with what this teacher's already doing with the pullouts and everything?
Well, I think that's what I think it will be easy for me to explain with the CPAC when I have Mike and the picture of the schedule. You can see where there are common academic times between the grades, and when there's lunch and recess and when specials are. So it's very clear the way he's lined up the schedules from 4 through 8. So it will be, I think when you see the visual, it will be a little easier for you to understand how the teacher would be able to work with a group of students and be able to maybe have all her students for ELA in one block, to do maybe comprehension and some writing, and then maybe in a different block might have might have 2 different times of ELA where she's doing the phonics and the fluency. So it's a little, I was able to be able to visualize it based on his visual of the schedule.
So just, again, for clarification, Carol, the means by which students are identified for the Fowler piece and also the Green Meadow, the 2 teachers that are down there with the Wilson expertise, could you just spend a couple of minutes on how they're identified to work in those, to be a part of those programs?
Right. The, at Green Meadow, there's the relying on the special ed teachers. They're working with the students already. The Wilson is really something that you work with students starting at grade 2, but we have foundations down there from K to 3. Foundations is the first step of Wilson, so that when students go from foundations to Wilson, it's all the same cues, it's all the same language, it's all the same cards. So that's how we'll be able to transfer the students. So the teachers will already know who those students are. We'll also be able to look at some of the other data we have, just as for the language-based criteria, looking at the students. For students to really work with the Wilson, it's really meant for students to have average to above average cognitive abilities. It's still that sort of classification. When the teachers go through their training, they're required to pick a student. The student has to be approved because they have to meet certain guidelines. So that it would be that same kind of guideline as we have with the language-based criteria.
Thank you.
Is there any plan of having any of the teachers, especially at Green Meadow, trained on the Orton-Gillingham model?
The idea with the Orton-Gillingham and Wilson training is that Wilson, you can go to the 3-day. It's a 3-day conference. It's during the day, during the school day. That's within teachers' contracts. But Wilson and Orton-Gillingham, like with Wilson, I just explained that they pick a student, they have classes. They essentially come out with the equivalent of 3 graduate classes. But with that student, they have to give that student 60 lessons. With those 60 lessons, they also have their professor that watches, observes a certain number of them, critiques them, does some follow-up with them. That's all done outside the school day. The lessons might be done during the school day, but all that other work is done outside the school day. I can encourage, I can ask, but I can't force the teachers to take the Wilson. Orton-Gillingham is a little bit more intense. You have to take a week class. It's the equivalent of a graduate class. And then it's a year long. Wilson is a year long. It takes you a whole year to get through all those lessons. Again, that's all outside the school day. So I can encourage, I can ask. Some of the other reading programs like Project Read, Linda Mubel, those are done through conferences during the day. So that's easier. But the most popular methods that are evidence-based are the Orton-Gillingham and the Wilson. And through hiring, like with Michelle.
Because it's my understanding that now special education teachers, do they have to have
We certainly look
Wilson
for it.
Okay.
Yeah, we certainly look for it.
The other thing I can speak to, just in regards to the teacher contract, we did negotiate, because we knew there were certifications that are not required by the state, but that we would like to require, so to speak. And so we have put into, well, I guess before we get into the contract, budgetarily, Carol and I have put in for professional development so that we can have funds to train folks. And we are thankful that we have had people who are willing to step up and do the intensive amount of work that is there. But we did also negotiate within the last contract to make sure that if there is ever a time where we don't have people who are volunteering, then we could potentially do, pay them to do that work separately, or I forget the provisions of the contract specifically, but we did negotiate that piece. I do have to say that these are things that when we were speaking with special education teachers in particular, they were hungry for, wanting to get this certification. It's an asset for them as well, because as you heard, it's not, it's intensive and it's not as common, so we have not encountered a situation where we're being told no in any capacity. But, as administrators, we do need to cover all the bases in case that were to happen.
And similar to my last question, Carol, for parents who have questions about if they're eligible for the program, and I understand, it's possible that this 60% number might clear it up for parents, but just in case it doesn't. So since it's Fowler, going back to my notes on the last similar question, would it be that they work with Chris Kitchell, or is it something that they would work directly with you?
Chris
We get
Kitchell,
lots of questions with parents
yeah.
with not sure what the next step is.
Yeah, Chris Kitchell or myself
Okay,
for Fowler, sure.
thank you.
Number 3?
Okay, we're going to end on a really high note. I am so proud of the work that Travis Zimmerman and Melissa Berger has been doing with our Oasis program. This is the social end that we are helping with. They have just been doing an outstanding job. And you'll see at the end some of the comments from parents and students.
If you'll bear with me for just a moment, I really do want to see if this works, because I find that, you know, if I can click through.
You don't want me to be Vanna?
No, because then I'll be like, oh, could you go, no, it might work.
It's hard
It may
to
or may
have like
not
a
work.
good flow with your presentation when you're worried about the slides.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I totally get it.
These are all bugs that can be worked out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Oh, wow.
Oh, good Lord, what the
That's
heck?
It's a lot of, all right, let's try it out.
Just plug in an unknown USB.
Oh, it works.
Yay!
My name is Travis Zimmerman. I'm the academic coordinator for the Oasis program. It stands for Ongoing Assistance and Support for Dependent Students.
Melissa Berger. I am the clinical
Yeah,
coordinator.
It's tough in here, so I just.
I would like to hide behind something. I'm not a big time into public speaking, and it's been 2 hours of hell for me over there. I'm the clinical coordinator of the Oasis program, so we are humbled to have the opportunity to be here and give you a brief overview of our program at what seems to be the middle of the night. So thanks for having us.
We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So we're just going to quickly go over to some of the aspects of our program. So some of the program rationale is coming from a report published by the Brookline Center for Community Mental Health in 2017. The researchers reached the following conclusions, and these are all staggering, but most specifically, over the past 20 years, the number of students hospitalized for psychiatric disorders has increased by nearly 300%. About 50% of the students, 14 and over, diagnosed with emotional and or behavioral disorders drop out of school. And those are really, really significant numbers that we're looking at.
You know, mental health has gotten to be such a challenge, but, you know, thankfully, it's also become a lot less stigmatized as we've, you know, really moved forward over the last 20 years. So, like, people who are affected by mental illness have, like, these avenues. And we talked a lot about MTSS earlier. We're going to revisit it just one more time. We're up here in the Tier 3 section. We are classified as another Tier 3 support that the district offers for some very specific issues. We're based on the BRIGHT model. BRIGHT stands for Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition. It's through the Brookline Center for the Community Mental Health. They're the people that did that study in 2017. It's classified as a Tier 3 intervention of last resort, typically for students that are dealing with like extreme trauma, avoidance issues, you know, social emotional issues that their anxiety prevents them from entering the classroom sometimes. And I just wanted to go through the tiers very quickly again. We've done them. Y'all did a great job at explaining them. The core.
Never hurts to go through.
The Tier 1 supports, like Jennifer said, are 80% of what we do in public education. It is like all of the core services offered by classroom teachers, by guidance staff, by administration, everything that we offer to all of our students. Tier 2 supports have a little bit more. They call it 4 plus more. So these are supplemental services for students that they kind of get consistently behind and they need help staying up academically. These can be anything from a student identified in our building-based support teams as needing a little bit of extra help from their teachers to needing a 504 plan, an IEP. Like the suite of services gets a little bit more intense as you go up in the tier. It could also be behavioral, like the kids that act up maybe need a little bit of extra support there. if a kid has a really rough life, if they're dealing with some at-home stuff, that they need a little bit of extra help at school. This could also be classified as a tier 2. Tier 3 support is core plus more plus a little bit more, right? So that's where we fit in. So our students have specifically been diagnosed with an emotional and mental health disorder, or they've experienced major trauma, or they've had major interruptions in their education due to the above, including maybe hospitalization. So those types of things are what we kind of look for in our referral criteria. They may otherwise not be in district. So some of these students we've actually brought back from out of district placement. So, but with the right support, they have been successful. So they're in district and they're thriving, and that's a good thing.
So the nice part about this program is that we're not working alone. As of this year, there are over 100 Bright model programs in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In our region, which ranges from West Boston to Shrewsbury, we have seen the following program successes. And as you can see, there are many successes listed. One of the two that we found most significant were 28% identified as moderate to severe risk of self-harm at program entry, went down to 4% at program exit. And again, this average length is about 10 weeks. The other piece is 51% who had excessive absenteeism, which is identified as missing 5 or more days. Prior to program entry, went down to 8% at program exit, which is really, really significant. And it's really, as we kind of keep developing this program, we've noticed that just getting through the door for some of these kids is just the biggest step of the day. So we also have the opportunity to work with this Bright team once a month, where we come together and talk about some of the things that are working for us, maybe not working for us, and can get and glean information from other programs that may have gone through some of the same things that we have.
That support network has been really, we're not building this in a vacuum, so that's very helpful as well. So, having the support to attend regional workshops and trainings on this. I know that a lot of your questions tonight so far have been focused on professional development, and thankfully y'all provide us the opportunity to go and network with these people and to experience firsthand a lot of these different program rooms and how they operate within other schools in our region. So that's been very helpful. We have some goals for our students. I think that we might have really just focused on the safety aspect of it. We want them to get caught up in their academic work, but we're very mindful of the of just like this kind of continuum of safety, where students really need to feel safe in school before they're able to be productive. So our whole space is kind of designed on this last kind of like core value, like increase these feelings of safety, decrease rehospitalization. Like that's kind of what we're focused on, and providing the family supports necessary to do that. And I think we might have 2 of these slides in here. Yep, so this is the one that we're going to deal with.
All right, that was like a strobe light. Okay. So supporting students in the Oasis program is based on 3 separate pieces: the clinical support, the academic support, and the family engagement. So for clinical support, each student who is in the Oasis program has access to the school psychologist, which is myself, as needed. Care coordination with outside providers, which is the outside therapists. And sometimes when students are being discharged from hospitalizations or in the hospital, we make that connection with them while they were there to help to transition back into school. And as always, crisis management, that's kind of an ongoing piece, particularly because we're serving many of the higher risk students, so crisis management happens quite often. Would you like to speak to the academic support? Okay.
So as the academic coordinator, when a student returns from absence, excessive absence, there is a lot to be made up, and so that just sheer volume of work can sometimes produce another reaction to make them want to exit from school. So Workflow management is kind of what we work on. We set up an academic plan using our existing framework of, we're a Google school, so we use Google Classroom and shared docs to kind of set up these plans with the teachers, and all the teachers are on these plans, and they're able to add, subtract, omit work, based on the need. What do we really need to get caught up? And so my job is to kind of negotiate that with the teachers, with the student, and to keep them kind of on top of their executive functioning as far as moving from task to task. And then we also work together with the family engagement piece.
Yeah. And part of the family engagement piece has been really huge part of our success with our students. When they're involved and we're all working on the same team, we can all kind of go in the same direction. We've also had the opportunity to work with Bright to connect families with other families who may be experiencing some of the same concerns and challenges with their students and in similar programs. So we have that opportunity to make that piece all come together.
This is the same information. I just wrote it in a different way and wasn't sure which one I wanted the most. So this is an old slide. You can just ignore it. All right. A few important considerations about the program is that if everything is working well with any Tier 3 support, what that does is it takes a high-need student and provides them the support they need, and that frees up and reduces the workload on the Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports. So in our case, freeing up guidance, liaison, and teachers to work and focus more on the 80% at Tier 1 and then the extra students in Tier 2. So us providing the care coordination takes a lot off of their plate. The counseling services, takes a lot off of guidance's plate. And we also we work with them to do future planning as well. So there's a lot of things that we're doing with these students in just kind of a short amount of time. And then once they have graduated from the program, they're always welcome to come back if they're ever in crisis or if they need access or help with any kind of long-term assignment. Our program availability, it does reduce the need. I would say it doesn't eliminate the need because it's a very specific set of students, but it reduces the need for out-of-district placements for some students. And the availability of this program also reduces the chance of psychiatric hospitalization or rehospitalization for students. So we've already seen that in play this year. So having access to those kind of supports in that safe space and access to, somebody to talk to has really lessened that chance for these students who are at risk to just leave. It's a halfway point, and we always kind of balance the idea of success. Like if you are looking at, just disengaging entirely, then take an opportunity to build resilience by just coming, staying in the room, and then once you're there, we can gently usher you back into the classroom. So like that's kind of the halfway point, and we use that to our advantage as a springboard all the time.
And we celebrate every time they walk through the door, because for a lot of them, it is a big, big step. And they seem to really enjoy being part of the classroom. So someone will always be there in the classroom, and it'll always be available for the students to come in when they need some time to decompress.
As part of what we do is we regularly do a check-in on the students, how they are experiencing the program, both when they come in after a month or so and then upon exit. We provide surveys for them, and some of them have agreed to put in some quotes. A lot of them say a lot of different things. I just selected 4 quotes. A lot of them are about increasing comfort in school, increasing comfort with class, feeling safe, feeling welcome, feeling safe with themselves, like trusting themselves more. But also working with parents has also been a really big part of what we do, and so it's a whole team approach. Like the parents must be involved. for it to be successful, and they have been. And so we've included a couple of testimonials from parents who have had a hard time getting their kid out of bed and into the school, but have now been able to do that regularly. So I'll just let you read this.
I actually can't help but to read this one.
Go for it.
Because I was very excited when they responded, because as everybody knows, when you are deep into the work, and you hope that you're doing the best that you can, you hear something like this and it makes it all worthwhile. As parents of a child with complex social, emotional, and clinical issues, the Oasis program has literally been a lifesaver for us. And of course, this is very personal to me because I know who it is, and we're very proud. The combination of practical help with homework, therapy-based emotional support, and a physical location to go when things are getting my child down provides our child with a place where they feel safe. This has contributed to their, I see that you put in, to their ability to progress academically and socially to a place where they have been accepted to the college of their choice and started to form social connections again. And that is just a really powerful statement from a very active parent who was very concerned for many years that their child was not going to be in a place where they could graduate. So, very powerful. Would you like to read that one?
I had another one on here that didn't make it. That is on my. If you'll let me pull out my phone, I'd love to. The Oasis program has literally been life-changing for my child and our family. The previous school year, they spent more time in hospitals and outpatient programs than full days at school. 3/4 through the year, they've only missed a handful of days due to anxiety and depression, and that can largely be credited to Oasis being a place where they can get help and find success even when they're struggling. They know that they can go there and be supported and not feel judged and fearful. And so that was also very powerful because that was a student that, does, like, getting in the door is a struggle for them on a daily basis. And we're always grateful when they come in. We're always excited. We celebrate that. And so it's really good.
So can you address, I know each case is probably different, but can you address what happens to the percent of kids that once they finish, like you said it was about 10 weeks, what happens when the 10 weeks are up and they're still not doing well?
So exit criteria, we have a handout for you, and each student is on a case-by-case basis. So the average day, we'd like to aim for about 10 weeks, but if there's a student who we've not really deemed as ready to leave, then it could extend further. Like when we have these transitional meetings with parents, we sit down and go through these criteria, like, are they feeling safe? Is their attendance ready? Did they complete all of their backlog of academic work? Like, and if that's not the case, then we don't exit them.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
I'd love to know how you start the process. Like, do you get a call from a parent, or is it from, the principal, or how does it actually begin to get them, like, out of the hospital and into the door?
Well, the highest risk kids are usually outside of coming from the hospital. So usually it's a referral from guidance or from administration as they're looking for a way to transition them back into school and help them to catch up. So that's where the referral process starts. And then we meet as a team to decide if they meet the criteria to be in this particular program, someplace that would be successful for them. And then we meet with the parents, and we go from there. And one thing that we hadn't mentioned is that we are still developing every single day and learning every single day. This is our first year doing this program, and we've had a lot of wonderful supports. Thank you, Carol. And we're, like we had talked about before, we have kind of been building the plane while flying. So to get to this point where we can actually present to you all of the wonderful things that have been happening in such a short period of time are really amazing. And that's a really, really good question because we struggled with the referral process for a long time. how do you get referred and how does it work? And so we're still in that process mode. But certainly anyone who's been in the hospital or out for an extended period of time, they are our top priority as far as getting them back into school and into the rhythm.
And how many students do you have right now? Or what's the maximum, I guess, that you can have with the two of you?
So, yeah, these programs benefit from a very small select group. So, our program cap is 8, and we have two emergency slots. So if there's an emergency hospitalization, then we look into that as a referral, just baseline. The current population is at cap right now, so there is a need, and we're trying to fill it.
And we have 2 alum now we're very proud of, and we see them on a regular basis. It's just kind of part of their day. They know when they're having a tough day that they can go. The teachers appreciate the fact that they have a good place to be. We actually have Oasis passes that all of the students have, so they can just show the teacher and there will be no questions asked, and they will come up to our room.
And I know we ideally would love to bring this down to lower grades. That was our hope, so we ended up with a deficit. How would that, you guys would end up being the teachers of those Oasis people, but do you see that being a real benefit if we could bring it down to the lower grades too?
So, absolutely. The one consistency that we've seen at regional meetings with the Bright program is one of the reasons why there are over 100 of them is that they'll start typically at the high grades because you see that need immediately. Like people are reaching the end of high school, and that's where a lot of these things come up. But they're also seeing a lot of these problems at low grades too. And so a school that typically starts one of these programs at the upper grades will also start one at the middle school. And very few of them, but a few of them have started even lower. So providing these emotional supports.
And it's really great because it's about awareness and intervention, and it's kind of all about us all working together and kind of providing that road for our students as they go from grade to grade, because you never know when these kind of symptoms are going to manifest themselves.
Talk about the weekly email.
That's part of our family communication. Carol wanted us to say we are regularly in communication with family and all the whole team. So if they happen to be a student that has an IP, we incorporate the special education liaison as well as their guidance counselor. But we regularly communicate with the family also, and that kind of helps to build that trust where they feel that their student is supported within the district. That has led to questions from parents of students who have kids at both schools, I school in Fowler, and I haven't gotten one from the Green Meadow yet, but hey, when are we starting a program down? Yeah, that's always, people ask that question, but it's definitely something that, like Melissa said, if you can build resilience at a younger age, then, maybe they don't need it as much. It's kind of like the same idea with intensive reading. If you build it lower, then maybe they don't need it when you get higher.
We had asked for startup costs for Fowler as part of sort of our work on the budget subcommittee. So we sort of have a magic number in mind, because I think that many people support expanding it to the middle school as a start. So we have our number, and we would love to find a way to do that creatively within the budget cycles. So the sooner the better, because not that everything comes down to money, but this is the kind of program that if we can start, it really starts paying for itself. So it's not about the money to me, because really it's about helping the students. I've been, very forthcoming that we have an 11-year-old niece in New Hampshire, and this does start early, and she is exactly who you're describing. She goes in and out between our family and hospitalization and things like that. So I was lucky and I was able to tour the program last fall. I didn't mean to, but I saw it in action, so to speak, and it was amazing. I mean, a nice, just lovely, quiet space, with no startup dollars, of course, but it's just, I felt like I was walking into such a very tranquil space. It was very calm. It was clear I was the loudest person, so I immediately corrected that. But just to, there was a student, and I didn't try to see the students because I wanted to maintain their privacy, but it was very clear the student was just crying, and it just breaks your heart. So I love that we've been able to slowly incorporate additional supports to the students, and this one is just incredible. So I just wanted to let that be said.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you for presenting. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, absolutely.
Well, thank you, everyone. Get home, get some rest, see your families, and then start again tomorrow.
AJ's got it.
I know, I just shouldn't touch it.
So moving on to the budget update, this is really an item that we put on every agenda in case we have an update, because there are times where a week before the budget, the agendas are created, we may or may not have an update. Tonight's is a fairly low-key one. It's more involved at the state level. The state released its second version of the budget. They're in their process. They will finalize their process in the middle of the summer after we've all made our tough decisions. I often show frustration, but that's their process, and we have to love it. It's nothing real different. It looks like it could be $20,000 more for us, but until we see the official cherry sheet on the website and emailed to us, we really can't count on anything. We need the official budget voted in, so we are monitoring that. I did want to report that I had a positive conversation with Representative Kate Hogan. She has been keeping in close contact with us as we discuss the costs associated with the situation at Green Meadow, and she is going to try to get some money from the state budget as they work through their process specifically towards our leveled library. So certainly nothing that we can count on because Kate is amazing, but she's one person. So we will, I appreciate her putting that forward on our behalf. It will be a lovely surprise if that happens. So if you see Kate, thank her for her efforts. She's always right there for us. And hopefully that comes to fruition. So that's another thing that we will keep an eye on as we watch the state go through its budget process. So that's really all I have, Mary. I can't think of anything else at that point. So members' questions on anything budget related or?
I guess if you could just review for people first of all, what's coming up and kind of
Oh, sure.
a little bit of so the budget subcommittee meetings have continued to happen. You've been, just for people to understand a little bit of the context of which you're reporting out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so that'll be good, and then I just want to get the date from when we went to the finance committee. Sorry, I just didn't have that with me.
Yeah, sorry to just bring that on you.
No, I don't mind at all. I just, don't, like I said, I just need a second. So. So in terms of the latest updates, in terms of the budget, we presented to the finance committee our proposed budget cuts, which will be finalized. So that was on March 25th. So we gave them an idea of what the budget cuts would look like and their effects on our school system. And those cuts will be voted on at our next school committee meeting, which is our annual legally required budget hearing. So that will be at the very next school committee meeting on April 25th. That will be in the Fowler Auditorium, as it is always scheduled to be. And that's really sort of where we're at in our process. Unfortunately, due to sort of our deadlines, or, we have contractual and I think ethical deadlines to let staff know if we're making changes that affect them. So our, legal and ethical deadline has always been May 1st. So we always have a budget hearing before that, so that we can, if we have to, unfortunately, if we have been in previous years laying folks off here and there or moving folks between buildings. We want to be able to get that information to them. And I should say that no staff member finds out in that way. They don't find out at a public meeting. I'm sorry, I probably made it seem that way. Those are conversations that happen either with Dr. Girardi or the building level principals or Jennifer Gaudet, just depending on, probably what makes sense in terms of which employer, which program may be affected. So we always make sure that those conversations happen prior, because that is just, as employers, I think the right thing to do, and that has been the practice in Maynard for many years. So in terms of the reductions, I think you folks might have spoke at this at the last meeting. The proposed cuts that will be voted on at the budget hearing, let me just read this correctly. So it's basically a change to the special ed consultants versus internal work in terms of occupational therapy at Green Meadow. So no one will be losing any services, which is excellent, but there'll be just a change versus doing more in-house versus bringing in outside consultants. That savings will result in $22,911. We will be renting out more rooms at Fowler. We have additional spare classrooms, so that's a revenue producer for us. That will bring in $15,000. We have an unfilled special education paraprofessional. In general, that position goes up and down throughout a year. I don't know how frequently, to be honest, but it's based on need. So based on folks moving in and folks moving out, and some kids, and I don't want to speak to exactly how you qualify this, but I know some kids get a para assigned to them in the middle of a year, or in the other case, I don't want to say graduate because that doesn't sound like what I mean. But the paraprofessionals, how many we need fluctuates. So we've had an unfilled one towards the end of the year, and we will go into next year not filling that, and that will save $16,000. But just to clarify, if at the start of the year, Carol's team assigns more paras, I don't want to say Carol has an open checkbook, because that's not true, but her budget, more than anyone's budget actually in the town, fluctuates based on need. So the plan is to go in not filling it until we need it, and then we'll deal with it at that point, and this happens every year. In terms of the big one probably is the current program of strings and chorus, which is happening during the day at Fowler. There's a proposal to move it to either a before school or an after school program, not fee-based, so really to maintain the offering, although it's not ideal that it's not during the school day. So that will still be an offering, but that will allow us to not fill a music position. So we'll go from having 3 full-time music positions to 2 full-time music positions. And then the teaching of chorus and strings, as it's actually happening mostly now, will be done by folks that we've been bringing in who have the professional expertise to actually teach strings. So I think it's a great program in terms of, I know we have a lot of interest in it. I'm glad it's not on the chopping block necessarily. This is just my opinion because I wasn't at the last meeting. And we'll have we'll have more ability to talk about this at the upcoming meeting. But that's sort of the thought process by which these cuts were presented to us. So that would hit that $100,000 that we had to overcome a deficit of. So,
Dawn, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by it's not going to be a fee-based.
from what I understand, and Dr. Girardi, please, if I'm misunderstanding, a lot of the after-school activities, and I don't know which age they start, because I only have a 9-year-old, and he's not really a joiner. There's a lot of fees for after-school activities, and so if there's no fee to do band during the day, the belief is we wouldn't want to charge a fee just because chorus and strings would now be happening outside the day.
So, some after-school activities and sports, there's fees for.
Or
However,
WAVN.
there are some programs where we've been able to shift them outside of the day, like chorus at the high school has always been outside of the day. And so that has not been a fee-based program because it's considered a class. The kids actually can get credit for it. And so that we're thinking of the same thing here, where we'll shift it because we already have, as Dawn mentioned, we had such big numbers, we were able to bring in outside people And so that cost is already built into the budget. They'll be doing it outside of the day instead of doing it during the day. But we will be reducing one staff member, which, you know, we hate to do, but at least it's through attrition, so we're not losing somebody. And so it won't be, there won't be a fee to participate in that activity, but it would be during the after-school or before-school hours.
Okay, so the line item is still, it's in this year's budget along, and it'll just go to next year?
The staffing
So
for that is already in this year's budget, so that will be okay for those professionals that we've brought in to do some of the instruction.
I see.
Great.
And actually, we've had 2 unfilled paraprofessional positions at Fowler, so that's why we have a little bit of a buffer where we can reduce one, and just in case we might have. That's, but you just never know, so that's a good point that Dawn
Well, yeah,
made.
and honestly, I don't want to say we might not have news from the state where, you
Right,
know, they give a
hopefully.
little bit more.
Yes.
And the special education budget is a moving target. You know, we have to service the kids that we have, and we have to meet the needs, so
Yep.
that's our job, so that's what we'll do, so. Great. Anything else on the budget?
Good, thank you.
No? Citizens' comments. So if anyone would like to make a comment, please step up to the microphone.
Hi, how are you? Ann Duddy, Green Meadow teacher. I just felt a little disheartened in a comment that I heard. And it was a little upsetting, and I don't think anybody meant to upset anybody, but when you refer to the paraprofessionals, I think people need to be very careful. They do more than just turn pages. If it weren't for the paraprofessionals that I've had over the years, I don't think I could do my job and do it well. I look at them as teachers. And the other day I had a conversation with a para, and I said, you know, when I refer to teachers, I hope you realize I'm including you. I don't look at you as a paraprofessional. So I kind of want to stand up for them because they do it. You know, just the other day, there was a little boy in the hallway who I know has been nonverbal for years. And I was amazed where he said hi. And it was the paraprofessional that has been with him for years that has taught him to say hi. So my hat goes off to the paraprofessionals because they're amazing.
They are definitely a tremendous
They are.
asset. So I don't know who misspoke.
Right,
or-
I don't
yeah,
think it
no,
was
so just,
intentional, but
yeah, no,
I know
it's-
it offended a
Thank you.
couple
We
of people.
Absolutely
appreciate
helpful
you
and
doing that.
absolutely a tremendous asset.
I guess I
to
have a
Maynard.
couple questions about the co-teaching model. I do believe the co-teaching model is awesome. 2 adults in a classroom is awesome. But the ratio is 36%. So I guess my question is for those kids who aren't in that co-teaching model. So I'm thinking 36%, half of 20 is 10 kids at a class, so it's less than 10 kids at a class. So there are classrooms that will currently have about 36% or even more without a second adult in the classroom or with a paraprofessional, not a co-teacher. So my concern is for those kids also, and for that special education teacher who now will have, or does have currently, a caseload of 20-plus kids versus 9. So I think we just have to look at that also. And also, if you're taking the kids with the specific learning disabilities category, you still have the medical, the communication, and the social and emotional. Sometimes those are the kids that are also have the most needs. So to put them in a classroom that doesn't have a second adult or doesn't have the ratio like the co-teaching model has, I think we just have to be very cautious of that.
And definitely, you know, I'm sure you do,
Yeah.
because you've been around and you've been
Yes.
amazing. Like, as I had said to the teachers earlier, where we want the collaboration effort,
Mm-hmm.
like with that, we really could not be clearer that we endorse collaboration.
Right.
I think collaboration for the teachers who are not in the model is just as critical. So
Correct.
we certainly support, you know, you talking to them about that. And,
Right.
you know, there are ways to let us know if you don't think that you're being heard. But we definitely want everyone to be participatory and be heard, because you have so much to add.
And I do think the Oasis program is amazing. I would love to see it at the elementary level because we are seeing more and more kids who have those needs.
Yeah,
And I
it's all
think
over
the
the country.
earlier we can catch them,
Yeah.
I think the better things will be.
Completely agree.
And then there was one other thing about the co-teaching. Hold on. Lost my train of thought. That's all right, I'll be back if I need to.
You know where we are.
Thank
It's all
you.
good. Thanks, Ann.
Hi, Jessica O'Toole. I'm CPAC secretary, and I have 3 kids in Maynard. Ann kind of beat me to it, but I also wanted to give a shout out to the paras because they do so much in our schools, and that I really feel like they're the unsung heroes of the schools. And I know my kids could not succeed or even function without them. So hats off. The other thing, I continue to be disappointed with the lack of transparency about the Fowler language-based classroom program. I just want to be clear to everybody that unless something has changed in the last 2 weeks, that program as a sub-separate program exists in concept only. There are no children in that program. There is a wonderful teacher with a lot of skills and certifications that is providing pull-out services, but is not functioning as a sub-separate program. And I just feel like that is something that has caused a lot of confusion in the community, and we need to be clear about that. The other thing is just as CPAC, one of our roles is parent education and resources. So we just wanted to provide some information to the community concerning parents' rights in regards to any kind of specialized program. And that is that IDEA, which is the Individual with Disability Education Act, parents are required participants in any discussion about your children's educational needs, their placements, evaluation, eligibility, anything. So just keeping that in mind, anytime there is a proposed program for your child, you are entitled to full information in a timely manner and to be an active participant and a full participant in that decision. You also have the right to observe any program that your child is currently in or is being proposed for your child. So I just wanted to provide that information. The other thing is, and this is something that we are currently working on, the CPAC duties, according to the Massachusetts law, include but are not limited to advising the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs. We are also authorized to provide advice to the district regarding its special education programs and policies. So one of the things that we are happy about is the recently established liaison position, and we're hoping that now that we have that, we can now fulfill our statutory obligation to provide advice on the programs and policies in this district. And hopefully, our goal with all that and any kind of collaboration with all stakeholders is that we have a better program and a better experience for our families. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I'm just going to piggyback a little bit of what just said in terms of placement being something that parents are included in. And elephant in the room, my child's the only child who's been proposed this classroom that I'm aware of. And any question that I have ever asked has not been answered. I had asked how many other children will be in this classroom. We don't know. What will the cohort look like? Couldn't tell you. What will my child's day look like? No idea. How many other children are going to be in there fully sub-separate and receiving science and social studies along with her? Probably none. So we're going to segregate my child and put her in a room all by herself, where she's currently in a placement where she's doing very well, succeeding, making fabulous progress, all because you want to put a program in place to win a lawsuit. And I'm so over it. I'm so sick of falling on deaf ears. No, don't cut me off. Please don't cut me off. I need to say this, please let me get it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Please.
I don't mean to cut you off.
Because honestly, I'm sick of falling on deaf ears, so I'm more here for the other parents out there who feel like they've been on an island from the start of entering this IEP process to let you know you're not alone. And if you have any questions, you want to talk to anybody about what you're going through or what you need, please reach out to me, reach out to CPAC, reach out to anyone, because you are not alone, and nobody has the right to do this to anybody's child.
Hello, Natasha Rivera, and I actually had a different question. Actually, we had a Green Meadow School Council meeting the other day, and we were able to talk a little bit about some capital project ideas that I think some feedback from the staff. And one of the topics that got brought up was about fencing for the playground, which was originally supposed to be included in Phase 2, possibly, of playground. I don't know. I know that kind of seems to have fallen off of our radar a bit. We had, there was different phases for a playground, and I think it's kind of, so the other thing that got brought up by a lot of teachers was that the grading or the draining is really still below, it's not safe still. So I know we spent as a town almost $200,000 to improve the playground. And I know Mary Beth was, this kind of predated her a bit, so I know she was going to reach out to Tim Golding a little bit about because I think he was the primary contact with the playground update, but it was generally a consensus in the room that there was not felt much improvement to the playground grading, draining, and now before we get too far away from when it was fixed or supposed to be fixed, I don't know if there's what follow-up can happen with the contractors to have it reevaluated on maybe on the next rainy day to see if there's any continuous improvement that can be made before we fail. Like, I don't know what total disaster would be, but I feel like it was a big investment, and I'd hate to see that kind of go back to where it was before.
So two things, if you feel like it's not moving forward from the school council's perspective, definitely ramp it up to Dr. Girardi and feel free to copy any one of us. But we're happy to make sure that the concerns are looked at. I know that I personally have reported those same things in the past to the DPW, and I'm not putting it on anyone, I'm just saying that's the process, right?
Right.
So and I was reassured it was fine. So if that's still not the case, then we need to know, and that's totally fine. So if you don't feel that it's going anywhere, despite everyone's best efforts, please ramp it up to us, and we're happy to follow up.
I know that Mary Beth, where we left it, was also going to circle back to Tim. I don't know.
Just if you don't feel that that goes anywhere, because you're, obviously on school council, you'll see it at a level we won't.
Okay.
Don't hesitate to say, hey, this is what we tried, we need, we need you, and that's completely.
Okay.
That would be wonderful.
Okay, no, I will do, and I don't know, I know there was also another piece someone asked, and I wasn't part of the playground improvement committee, but there was a coin collection of pennies, and it was supposed to be added, another piece of equipment, and I think a lot of kids are asking about that piece of equipment and where those pennies collection from a year and a half ago went, so I don't know who the best that kind of question too, because I don't think the committee is still formed any longer.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, so as we have the two principal models, so Mary Beth is leadership and operations. So operations encompasses the facilities in the building to some degree. I would start with her, and if she doesn't know, I would and I'm not trying to put it on you as the parent resident.
No, it's fine.
But whoever wants to sort of start the ball rolling, I don't, jumping over the principal who may have an answer, not you, us. Doesn't help, but if you don't get an answer, I think that.
And she didn't know, this was part of that same
That's what I mean. So
conversation.
if she doesn't know, then I would say, please just drop an email to Bob and copy me, and
Okay.
we will absolutely get that answer. Michelle likely knows.
Okay, and I think a lot of it, again, predates her, so she wasn't
yeah.
sure exactly where it left off,
No,
or
there's-
what the next
with
steps.
people moving, in
Yep.
and out sometimes, we certainly lose
gap
track.
in
so-
institutional knowledge.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I appreciate you bringing that up.
The other piece that I wanted to just thank the school committee for the future committee for implementing that. I went to the meeting the other day, and I think it is a really dynamic cohort of individuals who are dedicated. And I mean, I think obviously we all would like Josh to come work for Maynard, but but I think even hearing some of the feedback with the teachers tonight, they were like, aha, like some of the things that he was just talking about, very small pieces, but it talked about, just as we talk about quality, air improvement, and it seemed very simple in some ways, but it kind of goes to the point that I wonder, if, as we're looking back and looking also where we want to be, do we want to consider having a facility manager back at the school level as opposed to relying on, I know that was something that used to happen, now it's split, and now I feel like we're feeling the effects of that staffing loss, because I think the oversight for the custodians, a lot of that piece is not really there, or a lot of the, and, you know, I just feel like a lot of these issues could probably better be addressed if you have someone on site.
We are absolutely already looking at that. So
Oh,
I
good.
appreciate you bringing it up in public, absolutely, and we are already looking at our options.
Okay.
Like, I think, speaking just as one person, it's clear to me there were holes in the system, regardless of trying to understand all of that right this second. We need to address all of that, and we are very committed to that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It's those thoughts are well underway. To bring to the school committee, you know.
Right, and I
work in
mean,
small groups, but yeah.
we have an aging building, obviously, and we're not going to be getting a new building anytime soon. So I think it, just realizing the need is growing more than it's lessening. So that, thank you, glad that to hear that's being considered. The other piece about School Dude, so I know, and I know Josh mentioned about it this evening, but I wanted to get a better understanding, and I don't know if Dr. Girardi or Michelle, or if she left already. So from what I had heard at the FinCom meeting, Michelle is the administrator for School Dude at the school level, but Aaron, they use a different system. And so I was trying to understand how the loop will circle when there's a need for maintenance repair on site. Is it Michelle who has to forward it, or is Aaron going to have access to the system where he can log in every day?
And that goes to your prior question, where we want to absolutely understand, do we need a standalone facilities director?
Right.
Who, you know, it almost really just ties into your prior question. So
That's kind of where I was, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like
no,
it's a
totally.
lot for Aaron. I mean, he's the whole town.
Right, and we have Tim, who is our facilities manager, but I don't personally know how many directions he gets pulled in. So that's absolutely part of our review. So it's just launching a software is not going to solve a problem if no one is trained in it, and we still don't understand the sort of accountability tree. But all of those conversations are sort of part of this bigger picture, which will be solved sooner rather than later, because it's not something you want to let go. But this goes into the idea of, will we form an actual agreement with the town to have this all spelled out correctly so everyone knows what they're accountable for and can be held accountable for it? Or do we, what I've been saying is, do we get divorced and we just go our own way like we used to? And it's not a judgment, it's just, what do we need as a school system? So we'll be digging into that and then bringing it to the full school committee.
Okay, all right.
All good questions.
Yes, no, thank you very much. And I to echo again, because I don't think it really can be said enough, how important paras are for our, and I know sometimes words, you know, said in the slightest way, but in maybe not intended a certain way. But I think as we've seen, it's impactful to how it's received, especially if you're a person that's your primary job is being a para. You know, I can speak for my child. When I hear about the co-taught class, and I don't, you know, want to go too much into that, but you know, a lot of what a para does is to be so in tune with the child, to be able to kind of look at antecedent behaviors and be able to kind of almost pre-tell, you know, when a child's needs. And I think with the co-taught class, a lot of the struggle and understanding, or lack of understanding, is that when you have two teachers who are with a group, how is that really being met for a child's immediate needs always? Because every child is different. And some, yes, they will maybe be independent, but that's not all the child. I don't think the data supports that every child succeeds at that level, or I don't know. But I just want to make sure that there's a really, and going back to the budget piece about para and how it was cut to, this just reminded me of how we just cut a job that wasn't filled. There is a Green Meadow, a Fowler job that's posted right now for a special ed para. So it's hard, I think, to understand when we're looking to fill a para job, but then we have acknowledged we haven't ever filled a para job. That doesn't jive well numbers-wise. It doesn't make sense. Why did we never fill a job, but then we're looking for a job right now, and then we're talking about cutting a job we never filled, but then why are we looking for it? So it's a lot of circular logic that is not really clear, I think, to the community when they're hearing bits and pieces of information. So I just want to, I think maybe there needs to be a little bit of understanding to that piece as well.
Well, it's a helpful comment, so coming up to the budget hearing, we can get more clarity on, why are there listings and a proposed non-backfill, so those kind of comments are actually really helpful for us, because then we can get the information and bring it back, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Oh, and will the slides that we saw, will those be available? I know they were a little bit more in-depth in the handouts for the special ed and the CODOT.
I was going to ask them, I forgot while they were standing
I
here,
did
but to sort of put it on the website, and honestly, we have another to-do item when we form our subcommittees coming into the summer. So now we have a great website, and we haven't had any time to sort of put into this is sort of what I did when I worked. The organization of the website is becoming overwhelming.
Right, because it's becoming like one data dump. It's like,
put it on the website, put it on the website.
right, and I noticed that the documents page is like filling up, so I was thinking, I don't know if it's a possibility on the special ed page, you talk about like the Oasis program, all of those things, I think it would be great to easily find, they're all special ed programs under the districts, maybe higher.
We're going to probably propose that we eliminate the curriculum subcommittee, because now we have so many folks focused on curriculum. They can come and update all of us. There's not necessarily a need for two of us to be doing, there's really not a lot to do, to be honest with you. It's
Right.
more that the professionals need to come to us, talk about things, and provide us the opportunity to ask questions. But I would like to, I will be proposing that we replace that with a communications subcommittee of 2 members, because it's kind of getting old, right? A number of us have been here for years, and we've been parents for years. Sometimes with communication, we need just more bodies to help with the work. You're already seeing it with the Green Meadow Future Committee in a different realm. So I think focusing 2 members, if they're willing to take that on, would be amazing. So, because there's a lot of ways to work with the existing employees, but they need some direction.
Right.
Like, we've got amazing tech people at this point, but we haven't said to them, can you make it prettier, can you make it easier? But they will work with us if we say that that's a priority. So that's sort of a coming attraction that I hope whoever's on the committee at that time thinks is a smart transfer of subcommittee roles. So.
I think that would be a great idea. So I think that would be good, because I know we had a task force and it kind of dissolved, and then other needs kind of superseded that, but I.
Need at the time, and
Right.
how can we marshal the resources we have to move really important things forward, so.
Right. I know that for years, we keep talking communication, and so I feel like, we're talking about it a lot, but
Most of
yes.
us are really doers, not, talkers.
Right.
So I think we can all contribute to that. So.
Yes. All right, thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so, I don't want to break it. Okay, Dave Krijger, new member to the Future of Green Meadow Committee. So first off, I'm really honored to be part of the committee. I didn't prepare a question for this evening, but as I was listening to a lot of presentations, I just want to share a little bit of what experience I have in education outside of this area. For the last few years, I've been working particularly with higher education, people that are in their 30s, mostly single moms, 2 kids, going back to school in the evenings to make a better life for themselves and for their kids. I do the marketing for Purdue University Global, in case you've seen it on TV. Now, why do I share this with you? What do these women have in common? When you talk to the employers of these women, they love having these women actually work in their companies. Initially, the employers are like, I'm not so sure about this online education stuff, right? I'm not sure if it's really great quality. When you talk to them 3-6 months into it, they say, we love these employees. And why? They have grit, right? These women know how to get stuff done, right? We want to have more of people with grit on the team. Now, why do I share this with you? Because one of the things that I'm seeing more and more as you go back generations, our high school kids today are facing a lot of pressure, social pressure. Social media is a big deal in their lives, right? I look at my daughter and I'm a little worried about her starting to use Facebook, because here I see Julia and she's this lovely daughter they have, and I wonder what life she lives on Facebook or will live on Facebook. And we all like to live the life that we live on Facebook. I don't think I like to eat every day what I apparently see everybody posting what they're eating on Instagram. But the thing is, when you look at our surrounding towns, and sometimes you see it on the news, these tragic instances of suicide among high school kids. Why is that? A lot of it is, when I talk to parents, it's because social pressure. Something that it's not the academic pressure, it's the social pressure amongst kids, the expectations that they set amongst themselves. And when you take grit, resilience is a big part. We talked about it a little bit tonight. When all these pressures build up, social pressures at school, and you name it, 10 different things, they build up. What we need to invest in as early as we can is to allow our kids to build resilience, to build self-esteem, to build grit. So when inevitably that pressure comes, social, emotional pressure, wanting to fit in, they have the thick skin, they know how to stand up for themselves. The co-teaching model might really work for some kids and not for others. But what it might teach more kids is to actually have empathy for kids that are different. And we didn't talk about that, but I hear it, it hurts me a little bit personally. I have a son with special needs. It's hard to hear when parents say, you know what, I don't want my kid in that classroom because they're going to be exposed to X, Y, and Z. It's different behavior than what they're used to. Maybe it will interrupt their learning experience. I get that. But what those parents are not getting is that we're actually allowing their kids to develop empathy and something that maybe other kids might not get. So by the time you get that empathy, by the time you learn to respect and embrace differences, by the time you get to those tough years in high school, guess what? You might have that resilience to not be as impacted by all that pressure. And now you're going to be successful because all the longitudinal studies show 20 years post-college, who's most successful in life? It's not the ones that went to Harvard or MIT per se. It's the ones that had great relationships with teachers, with a happy upbringing. They were learning self-confidence, empathy. They developed EQ. It's not just about IQ, it's also about EQ and how you work with others. It's those people. You know, if you go to Harvard, by the way, great school. I didn't go there. If you went to Harvard, that's awesome, by the way. It'll get you in the door, and you're obviously very smart. But in order for you to be successful in life, you need a lot of different skill sets. And 20 years later, it doesn't matter where you went to school, because you now have 20 years to prove yourself in life, right? So the more that the school can invest in those services, whether or not it's the things we talked about today, but really identifying when people.
Hi, Danielle Pimenta. I'm speaking as a parent and someone who absolutely loves talking about literacy. So let me start with thank you. Either yesterday or today, now I'm getting my days confused, an email went out about the bus registration, and that was translated not with Google Translate.
Yay.
I'm serious, like I was really
waiting to see if it was good or bad. I thought it was good, so excellent. All right.
So I was really, really happy with that, that to be honest, it was sent out first and it wasn't translated, and then it was sent out again with the translation, so I really, really appreciate that. And then feedback on that, I'd love to have seen a link to the form in the languages that were there, because it said go to the website, and if you go to the website and you don't speak English, you cannot find it. So an easy way would have been to just link the forms there, and then you'll be done. So now I have a question, and I came in about 15 minutes late, so I don't know if it was addressed earlier, but we had a resignation this week. And I'm just wondering whether whatever Justin was working on was given to the rest of the committee to finish up for him. Because I know he was working on something for me, and then he resigned, and I'm like, I don't know if people are picking up where he left off, or if parents should just start emailing again and start the process again.
Yeah, Dr. Girardi, unless you have anything to add, it was fairly sudden. I'm acting chair. I don't know, maybe I'm actually the chair, I don't really care, whatever, I'll run the meetings. We need to pick a vice chair, that's a note for later. So I would say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. So I don't have anything from Justin. And I'm not trying to say anything bad, I
Oh,
don't
no,
have-
neither am I. I'm
saying
just
it,
trying to
I'm
figure
saying it,
out.
So
Okay,
I'm not trying to
so,
say it in a bad way, so I just don't know how he left things that he might have had on his plate.
so I'm guessing parents should restart the process and give you the information of
Yeah.
where we were.
I wish I had a
at
better
that
answer
point.
for you,
Yeah,
but,
it sounds like
yeah,
that's why
if
it
there's,
is.
you know,
Okay.
if there's email chains that you'd like to forward,
Yeah.
We're happy to help.
Okay, great, thank you. Then I have a quick question about the Oasis program. Are the Oasis professionals, which they're really awesome, are they bilingual?
I would send all those questions to Carol Gahan. We don't know those answers.
Okay, it's a systemic thing that I'm about to ask. So the reason why I'm asking is if they're bilingual is logically because ESL kids can be part of this program if they find themselves in that position. Because it's a program that includes so much therapy involved, you need to be able to communicate well with those kids, right? So I'm putting it out there, just the idea that we have to prepare for the language component before it happens, so we have to have that plan, if that makes sense. Yeah, okay. And then I also had a question about the quota, and it's hard because they're not here. They said that the Wilson tutoring would be taking place within the co-taught classroom because the 2 special education teachers who are going to be co-teaching are Wilson Level 1 certified, which is great that they have the right certification. So I had a question about how this is going to work in practice, okay? Because in order for Wilson to work, you have to have equally matched peers, so they have to be at the same level and needing the same skills, okay? And then it has to be small groups. And the tutoring has to take place 3 times a week, 90 minutes each session, but you can divide it up and do it 5 days, right? So if you have about 10 kids who need the support or the service, that adds up to like over 13 hours a week. So that special education teacher will be working with these 10 kids for 13 hours a week with them only. So I'm just trying to figure out what it looks like for the children in the classroom, but also the teachers, because if the special education teacher is spending that significant amount of time doing the intervention with the small group of kids, then it's not really a co-taught as much as it is a push-in service. So I think we need to think about, yes, the co-teaching, which I absolutely support and love. Yes, the Wilson tutoring, because that's what the kids need, but in practice, the logistics of it, what happens with the rest of the class when that one teacher is sitting there for 90 minutes with 3 kids at a time, okay? Did that make sense? Because that's...
I followed what you said.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's.
I mean, I think, no,
question for
so,
Carol,
yeah,
and-
no, so
and-
it's a question for Carol,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. But I definitely followed you, if
Okay.
that was your question, yes.
Yeah. Bethlehem, did you have a question? You kind of like...
I was just going to say that I think that some of that feedback would be things that we could talk about.
Oh, at your meetings, yeah, that's great. Yeah,
That's a perfect place for it.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Heading to members' comments? Annie, do you have something? I'm sorry, I just saw you heading back.
As a daughter, I always have issues with this.
If you just talk over.
Yeah, okay. So Annie Alexopoulos, my daughter is actually in the co-teaching first grade classroom. So I wanted to come after listening to all the comments. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just want everyone to know that my daughter doesn't know which kids are on an IEP. Like, I think it's because of those teachers and her kindergarten teachers, because she was in an integrated classroom in kindergarten, and she didn't know who needed special services. And I think it's a lot because they're innocent, right? And also it's because of the way they're instructed, because it's not singled out. And I think it's also really great that in kindergarten they were taught the social thinking model. And it's not, I know a couple years ago, it was only the kids that had speech therapy or met with the school psychologist that were taught the social thinking. But now everyone is taught it, so everyone's using the same vocabulary. So coming from a perspective of a child who's considered, a typical developing child, I'm really excited that she is using all this vocabulary and she's using it at home. And I'm also excited to see that to her, it's just her best friend. She doesn't think of it as her best friend on an IEP. And she shouldn't at 6, right? Exactly. So I'm really excited that she's learning all these things. And I just wanted to comment after someone else said something about teaching your child empathy, because as a parent, I was super excited she was selected for this program because I thought it had great advantages academically, socially, and making her a really great citizen.
Okay. Thank you, that's great to hear. All right, members' comments?
I just wanted to reiterate the hard work.
I just have one
I'm
really
sorry.
quick, really quick.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
just wanted
fine.
to reiterate, so I think there's going to be another CPAC meeting. Could you just say again when that would be?
I think that's
Somebody said that
I
it
don't
would
know
be.
offhand.
Does anybody
Do you know when
when
the
the
meeting
next
is?
one
It's
is?
in 2 weeks.
Which one are you talking about? The board meeting?
Yeah, which one are
Or
you
the
looking for?
collaboration meeting with the administration?
I think the collaboration meeting
Meeting
with
with
the
the
administration. Yeah. That's the one? Okay. And who will be there? Sorry, and who will be there?
So, the CPAC board, Mauro and myself, and so far, so we've only actually had one meeting this year. So, so far it's been Charles and Carol. Was there anyone else that was there? Mike Barth will be coming to
Okay, that'll be
the
good.
next one to help us visualize how things work with scheduling with the language-based program.
It's a really good, actually it makes me think of a question. Are these meetings being posted on the CPAC page and on the school website?
Probably.
Yeah.
They're not posted where?
Any place else. She doesn't think they're posted anywhere.
Oh,
Is that what
okay.
you all do for your meeting? Because for us, it's just 2 of us.
But for us, it's the whole board, so we have,
Right.
it's a public
But-
meeting because
right.
the whole board is there.
Okay.
Right.
We
right.
could- Yeah,
You're
We
welcome to come.
can put it on.
but yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point. If people don't know when the meetings are, they can't go. So,
I just
This is
texted
sort of
people
a-
on the Maynard CPAC page. and-
yeah. Well, and their group meeting is a sort of a new thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's,
yeah.
So let's make sure that those are
No, I
on
think
the
it's a
school
great
website.
opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
I appreciate your.
That's a
your
great
making
point.
Sure we're aware of that.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandra Scully. Just a very minor comment. This is the second time I've seen Mrs. Gahan leave or try to leave after she's presented something, and I had questions for her, and I'm just disappointed that she left and I wasn't able to ask those questions. That's all.
So, no, I just wanted to reiterate what Bob had said earlier about the hard work that Michelle Resendez and Jennifer Gaudet and Josh Morse and Aaron put together in order to, the application for the MSBA was amazing. I sat in on one meeting, and the questions that they asked were very intense and needed a lot of thought and a lot of preparation. So just wanted to thank them. So, that's it. Awesome.
So I just mentioned it before, since we didn't have time to put it on this agenda, on the next agenda, we should just make sure that we have the board organized correctly. So an official chair, an official vice chair. So we'll put that on the next agenda.
So for our last meeting, we had, I had tried to make sure that we had some follow-up items, and I just wanted to be able to make sure that we were helping people understand the things that we were doing behind the scenes to help move things forward. So the Phase 3 announcement went out, I think the next day after you had mentioned it in that meeting, Bob. The asbestos test results are being posted daily, right? And Bob did end up talking to there was concern about Green Meadow principals, and as we were talking about communication and staffing updates, so anyone that's at Green Meadow would have seen the staffing update that came out, and that moving forward, how they're going to be handling that. And then, let me see, what else do I have? You sent the notice out about the citation appeal, which people were asking about, Bob, and that's posted on the website. We did start looking at school councils in policy subcommittee and having like a district level policy in relation to school councils. So we looked at Lexington was an example. There are a couple others that we pulled out. So we started that process so that we have something in place. Again, it's so that it's not in someone's head institution, so that there's something to refer to that's a guiding document to help with that in relation to school councils for the district and how we utilize them. So that's all spelled out. We're going to continue to let you know as we're moving through foundation budget and advocacy ways that we can all get involved and assist with that. We also had the superintendent evaluation on Wednesday, April 3rd, that was mentioned with the Mass Association for School Committees. So they gave us a training in superintendent evaluation, and after the election, moving forward, they have additional trainings that they can do with us for free, and they'll come out to us. So we'll be able to bring that to the full board and as it's constituted after the election. So that will be very exciting. Awesome. And then you all have seen a lot of the things that have happened in relation to the Green Meadow building and amazing progress that the Green Meadow Future Committee has made. We had given them just some background and to help them get going and connect them and navigate through and the information from the last meeting. And then, let me see. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes so I can make sure. And we are looking at what we need to do for the next conversations. Don ended up attending a BOS meeting with Bob, where they had the conversation and laid out what they had laid out at FinCom around what the current understanding of the ask was. And then we're in further conversations at this point with the FinCom chair and continuing to see, okay, exactly when do we need to know what, so that we can make sure that we're continuing to move this forward and we get it by the dates that we need to get it, so that we have what we need to be able to. So that's still continuing, and that's been multiple emails and phone calls. And then one thing that I wasn't sure was a list of itemized SPED items that were purchased using SPED stabilization funds, Bob. So that was going to be one to.
I would say that's another to do. I'll double check, because
Great.
Michelle and Jennifer were working so hard on the SOI, I'm not sure we got to that.
Yeah.
The other one that you had asked was there's some MMA questions that I
Yes.
had gotten some of them done, but I didn't get them all done, so those
Yeah.
will be going out too.
Great.
So those are two more on it to-do list.
Yeah, great, thank you, I appreciate that. MMA they had bulleted points, and because the meeting was so long, they just handed them to us afterwards, so I passed those along. That's the Maynard Music Association. And then the air purifiers, I did have one question about, so they're going to start installing more. Do you know, I think there were like 54 or something. Do you know by when they'll all be installed?
I don't, because they can't be done during the school day, and some of them involve some electrical work.
Okay.
But I do know that our head custodian has been working on it.
Yeah.
Technically, the town's head custodian has been working on it like on weekends, and so he got 14 done last weekend. He's expecting to do more this weekend.
Okay.
So we're hoping to get as many as we can, as quickly as we can.
Can that happen over school vacation?
I'm hoping, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I knew you said the electrician's part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were the ones that I had particularly caught and made notes on so that people understood the things that we were continuing to move forward from our side well in communicating to make sure that the Green Meadow Future Committee had what they needed to be fully operational. So just wanted to share that with you all.
Thank you.
I was very excited to hear about the therapy dog, Greta, on Monday. And thank you for taking pictures and posting that.
I'll post them
Yeah.
tomorrow. I just haven't had a chance to,
Yeah.
but I did send them to the
Yeah.
two of you because I know you both were so proud
Right.
that we were able to make that
Yeah,
happen.
I'm super excited to have that out so people can see how that's working. And the other thing that we worked on in the policy subcommittee was the communication rubric for the district and figuring out the different categories of appropriate and positive communication for our district. So we're still working on that.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being here.